What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was Gilgamesh? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. It is said that the Gilgamesh is a thief. It is said that he destroys heroes and villains alike to take their sword up as his own. This cannot be further from the truth. The Gilgamesh has never been one mere mortal man before, so how can he steal something from anyone when has never truly existed? He is more akin to a spirit placed in 6 different swords that have been scattered throughout time. Small sparks of his tales reach throughout history, just brief enough to go unnoticed. He is rarely spoken of because barely anyone knows him, not even those who have wielded a part of his entity have fully grasped his nature. Most people only know stories of the heroes and villains that have held the swords that hold his spirit, but not the spirit itself. It has been hypothesized by the few that have ever known of him that if the Gilgamesh was ever brought into one being, it would mean the end times were upon them. For where he walks the earth is raked behind him. A single sword of Gilgamesh is powerful in the right hands, but all 6 swords have the power to destroy the entirety life as it is known. Since the beginning, no one person has ever held more than one of his blades. The spirit doesn't search for a host. It is pulled to them. And upon his birth, Naruto Uzumaki had the potential to pull any one of the 6 pieces of the Gilgamesh into his being. Instead, he pulled them all. The Gilgamesh has never been one mortal man. Until now. Team 7 was on their way to the Wave Country with the bridge builder Tazuna as a routine protection duty. Even though the duty has been proven to be far more treacherous than previously thought with the arrival of the Demon Brothers, they still push on to complete their mission. The sun was shining as the one-eyed Jonin Kakashi took point in the march, followed by the bridge builder and finally the 3 genin on either side and behind the old builder. The whole group seemed quite happy except for one member. Everyone's favorite hyperactive ninja still had his head down in sorrow as he recalled the events that occurred the day before. Flashback. The Demon Brothers were closing in on Naruto, but he couldn't move. His fear paralyzed him in a way he never thought possible. I'm going to die. Thoughts of his demise raced through his mind. Just before a lethal strike was blown by one of the brothers, the prodigy Sasuke Uchiha jumped in and saved Naruto. The most infuriating, dick-headed guy in the world saved him, and now he has to live with it. That son of a bitch even had the nerve to taunt him afterward. Needless to say, Naruto was less than happy. Flashback over. Naruto picked up his head in defiance. No more. Next time I'm going to do the saving and Sasuke is going to watch. I'll show that bastard who the scaredy cat is. With renewed vigor and swagger put back into his stride, he bravely walked forward. As he charged with his head held high, a giant 7-foot cleaver whizzed just above his arrogant noggin and embedded itself into a tree. What the hell? Naruto yelled as he looked to see a tall, muscular man stood upon the sword that just dug into the oak in front of them. The silver-haired Jonin of Team 7 was already prepared for this attacker. Team 7, guard Tazuna. I will deal with this, Kakashi said as he pulled out his Sharingan and a kunai without hesitation. The tall man clad in blue only laughed. Ah, copycat Kakashi. What a pleasant surprise. His arms were open in familiarity, almost as if he was looking for a hug, but it was merely a taunt. Kakashi recognized the man from the bingo books and cast a worried glance to the 3 genin behind him. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the hidden mist. I can't say this is pleasant. The scarecrow Jonin lazily drawled out to not beget his nervousness. Zabuza jumped to the ground and removed his blade from the tree with ease. Enough with the small talk. Give me the bridge builder. He held his hand out as if Kakashi wasn't going to hesitate to do what he said. Or do you need a little persuasion? He spoke as his hands tightened around the grip of his massive sword. Kakashi signaled to his group without turning around. Whatever happens, do not move away from Tazuna. The team nodded in agreement even though their instructor could not see them. The large enemy only maliciously laughed again. Good. I was going to fight you anyway whether you gave him to me or not. Without any further warning, the killer from Kirigakure began his assault upon the lone scarecrow. The fight was magnificent, but Naruto let his eyes wander momentarily from the clash of the titans in front of him and instead focused on his team. To his left he noticed Sakura seemed worried but alert. Her long pink hair was fully tied back and she was in a defensive stance around Tazuna. He let his gaze linger on her features longer than he planned. He'd have to stop doing that. To his right he noticed Sasuke. The black-haired boy was acting weird. He was fidgety, almost like he was afraid. Naruto grinned until it felt like his face was going to split in half. He's scared. This will be my chance. If anything happens he will look like the coward and I'll be the hero. Then I'll get some respect. Naruto focused once again on the fight. It seemed like Kakashi had the upper hand, but one small slip-up and he fell into the trap that is Zabuza's water prison technique. Now Kakashi is stuck in a water bubble and Zabuza is forced to stay in one place to keep the jutsu active. It was now a Jonin versus 3 genin. Even if their enemy couldn't move they could tell they were still fucked. Naruto knew there was no time to waste and took the initiative. Sakura-chan, you stay and guard the old man. Sasuke and I will try to free Kakashi-sensei. She wanted to argue with him because they were told to stay where they were, but she knew there was no other option so the pinkhead only nodded. The enemy Jonin laughed. I could take you brats on without my hands. Don't think you're gonna win because I'm preoccupied. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Using only one hand Zabuza made the signs and formed a water clone to his side. The previously frightened Uchiha gained courage and moved to intercept. He charged the Bunshin and attempted to embed it with kunai. Don't go without me, asshole. Naruto mentally screamed at his friend. The blonde Jinchuriki's anger instantly changed to worry as the clone effortlessly batted Sasuke away and he hit the ground with a hard thump. Sasuke. The other 2 members of Team 7 yelled to their fallen comrade. Naruto ran to his friend to look him over. He was unconscious. There were no severe injuries that he could see, but the blonde boy had no experience with medical ninjutsu so he didn't know if there was a concussion or other internal damage to his friend that he couldn't detect. He glared at the water clone staring down at him. You bastard, I'm going to kick your ass. The young genin charged the clone just as his friend did and in the same way he was batted down. The difference is he wouldn't stay down. Naruto relentlessly attacked the clone. Each time he got up he was knocked down and each time he was knocked down he got up. Defiance. Naruto heard the voice in his head, but he ignored it. Instead he kept pushing forward only to be brutally beat back down. The clone was obviously growing tired of this green genin not taking the hint to stop. He was finally fed up. That's enough, brat. It's time to die. The Zabuza clone howled as his giant cleaver rose above his head and he used all his might to bring it down upon the child in front of him. Naruto looked up at the cleaver coming down to his face with disdain. He raised his hands in an attempt to push the sword away since he couldn't escape it, but the blade had already passed through his defenses and was on a direct course with his face. I refuse to die. As the giant cleaver was about to crash into Naruto's head, time itself seemed to slow down until the decapitating sword appeared to stop about a foot from his face. The stillness around Naruto was odd. You would defy the very gods. A strange voice crept into Naruto's brain. It was a strong masculine voice, but was also reassuring and warm. Who's there? What's going on? Naruto was confused. His body couldn't move, but he could see everything around him was stopped as well. The scene was frozen to look like a 3D photograph of what was taking place except he noticed something odd. A large black hilt was now in his right hand where there was none before. The voice boomed back into his head. I am Gilgamesh. Or more precisely you are. My name's not Gilgamesh. I'm Naruto. He was confused so he started yelling as is his nature. Gilgamesh is Naruto. Naruto is Gilgamesh. They are one and the same. Naruto hated riddles. Just explain to me what is going on, creepy voice man. He said, exasperated. The voice was unaffected by Naruto's taunt. Boldness has triggered your awakening and as such you've unlocked your first weapon. It has been pulled from the depths of your soul and has been drugged to the surface by your unending defiance of those who wish to quell your life. What the hell are you talking about? I don't have a weapon. Naruto looked to the object in his hand. This hilt came from nowhere, but there is nothing attached to it. Call its name and the first of 6 will belong to you. Once you summon it the sword will be at your beck and call whenever you see fit. It will imbue you with power and give you abilities that no others are allowed. Under its weight no enemy can stand. The voice went silent. Naruto attempted to contact the voice again to no avail so now he was stuck staring at the hilt in his hand. It was obvious that time would not go back to normal until he figured out what the name of this thing was. He wasn't sure he wanted time to speed back up since there was a giant cleaver about a foot from his face and he had no way to stop it, but I digress. As he gazed upon the hilt, whispers began forming in his head once again, but this time it was not Gilgamesh. This voice was unintelligible. It sounded more like 1,000 voices rolled into one. Echoes of, "Say my name," rang through his head over and over. "Tell me what your name is," Naruto demanded. "It is God Eater." Zabuza flinched as Naruto's voice rang in front of his clone. From the hilt in Naruto's hand a large mechanical blade shot forth and knocked the clone's sword on its side, causing it to turn back into the water the clone was made of. Without hesitation the clone jumped back to regroup and instantly remade a sword from the water on the battleground. The weapon that appeared in Naruto's hand was less like a sword and more like a 5-foot bludgeoning device. It was shaped like a greatsword, but where the edge of the blade was supposed to be there was a long metal block with gear-like ends. It was at least a foot thick and appeared to weigh several hundred pounds. At a cursory glance Naruto could tell it had absolutely no cutting power and could only be used to beat his enemies down. Naruto's comrades watched in awe as he picked himself up. Even the waterlogged Kakashi was amazed and confused by what just happened. As Naruto moved around he found that the sword was heavy, but not too heavy to lift. "This thing must weigh 150 pounds. He said as he hurled the large mechanical-looking sword over his shoulder and rested it near the crook of his neck. As he did this Naruto felt his feet begin to sink into the ground as if he was being slowly pulled under. 50,000. 50,000 what? Naruto thought to Gilgamesh as he pulled his feet out of the ground only to have them sink in again. It's closer to 50,000 pounds. Not 150. Naruto's eyes went wide as he looked to the massive being on his shoulder. How am I able to hold this if it's that heavy? This is God Eater. Under its weight no enemy can stand. It has the power to crush the gods themselves. You are the only one who can wield this sword. It is futile for others to even try for they will be torn asunder by its heavy burden." Naruto scoffed. "You must be lying. There's no way." Naruto pushed God Eater off of his shoulder and let it fall to the ground. As it hit the dirt the earth beneath his feet shook and a crater opened up below him causing Naruto to fall in. The blonde Jinchuriki stood up in the hole he made and dusted himself off. "Then again maybe you're not lying." Naruto tried to climb out of the crater, but the weight of the sword he's holding made every step he took wasted. It had been almost a full minute and he still hadn't gotten out of the crater he inadvertently made. "I had to get out there. They need me." Whenever he gets one step up he sinks into the ground or slides back down. "This sword is too damn heavy. Will it away?" "What? It is at your beck and call. Will it away and it will do so." The voice once again goes silent. Okay." Naruto picked up God Eater and concentrated on pulling it back into himself. After a moment the sword glowed and sunk back into the hilt, which then disappeared as well. "Sweet. This just keeps getting better." Naruto jumped out of the crater to see the last Uchiha now awake and once again engaging the clone. Only this time he was being more careful. He wasn't the best in his class for no reason. He learned from his earlier mistake and grew as a shinobi. A mere glance at each other allowed the two genin to formulate a crude plan. Their teamwork was paying off because Naruto knew Sasuke was going to draw the clone's attention while the blonde boy ambushed him from the back. Just as he thought, Sasuke began to engage the clone from one direction only so he wouldn't see Naruto sneaking up. As Naruto stealthily approached the clone from behind he quickly glanced around to make sure he was clear. Naruto was relieved to see Sakura standing in front of Tazuna. The both of them were still okay and completely unharmed. Sasuke must have protected them while Naruto tried to make his way out of the crater he formed. He noticed the real Zabuza watching him approach his clone, but saying nothing to warn it of its demise. Naruto could almost feel the demon's smirk under the bandages that covered his mouth. Why won't he warn the clone I'm coming? Maybe he wants to see my sword in action again? Naruto returned the smirk to Zabuza. I don't even know what it can really do yet. I guess this will be educational for both of us. Sasuke threw one final kunai at the clone, which was promptly blocked, before jumping back. Come on you wuss. Being dead won't be so bad. The clone taunted. You're the dead one. Naruto stood behind the water clone with both hands held high, but nothing in them. God Eater. Just as before the hilt appeared and the mechanical battering ram shot out from it. The clone turned and held up his sword to block. He might as well have dispelled himself because no part of the clone offered any resistance to the downward swing of Naruto's sword. The metal monstrosity just plowed straight through the water sword and Waterman without even so much as slowing down. Yeah, Naruto basked in his victory for only a moment before Sasuke appeared next to him. I don't know what the hell that thing you're holding is, but it may be our only hope to help Kakashi-sensei. We have a strong chance to free him now, Dobi, so let's not waste it. Naruto pouted, but listened to the Tami's idea. Zabuza stood back watching the two confer with each while they stared back at him. When it seemed they were done planning, they began to approach him. Just because you can beat my clone doesn't mean you can beat me, Zabuza said. They still steadily approached him. Naruto's sword disappeared again and he moved behind the Uchiha to retrieve a large shuriken from a summon scroll in his pack. After handing the oversized throwing weapon to the black-haired boy, Naruto resumed his gait next to his friend. What the hell is that sword the blonde one has and where did it go? Maybe if I kill him I can take it. Still, I can't let him get near me. Zabuza smirked. I can always make more clones. Brats. Zabuza made a hand sign and 3 water clones appeared in front of him. Sasuke took the shuriken and threw it with all his might towards the real Zabuza hiding behind the 3 clones. Raw, Sasuke screamed as he poured every bit of power into his throw. That won't work, he said as the 3 clones lined up to either block or take the hit for the real Zabuza. However, just before the shuriken hit the first clone, the large throwing device poofed to reveal Naruto spinning towards the clones in place of the shuriken. Shit, a henge. Naruto was spinning just as fast as the shuriken was when Sasuke threw it. But in his hands was the God Eater, and at this velocity the momentum created by Naruto and his sword together tore through the clones with ease. He was now on a direct collision course with the real Zabuza and nothing was in his way. The muscular killer from the hidden mist released Kakashi from his water prison and attempted to jump away. Before he fully escaped, Naruto nicked the man in blue fatigue's foot with his handheld tank, effectively shattering every bone throughout. Zabuza winced as he felt the bones in his foot basically turn to dust under the might of Naruto's sword. If he wasn't a seasoned veteran, he may have even passed out from the sudden pain. Instead, he fell onto his one good foot and leapt after Naruto. He didn't understand what was driving this genin, but the kid was too much of a wild card to allow him to roam freely. Naruto dragged God Eater across the ground to stop himself from going too far and pivoted to try to find the enemy as quickly as possible. Before the blonde boy knew what was happening, a fist connected with his face, which caused him to release the God Eater and sail through the air until he hit a tree. Unlike being hit by the clone, this punch hurt a shitload. There was no quick recovery time after this hit like he was able to do earlier. A Jonin just punched him in the face and now he was on the edge of consciousness. He was lucky to be alive. Jonin have been known to cleanly punch through sheet metal even without enhancing themselves with chakra, and Naruto is positive that if Zabuza wasn't injured then his face would have been permanently remodeled. Although Naruto was out of the picture for now, unfortunately for Zabuza, the famous copycat ninja was now released and free to work his magic. The broken foot he was limping around on spelled disaster against the seasoned Leaf Jonin, and in no time flat Zabuza was at the brink of death. Just as Kakashi was about to deliver the final blow, a Kirigakure Hunter Nin appeared and killed the giant rogue ninja. He left to dispose of the body, leaving a suspicious Kakashi. In the aftermath of the battle, Naruto was crowded by the members of his team and Tazuna as he sat against a tree. The pink-haired member was the first to speak. "Baka, what the hell do you think you were doing? You could have died," she screamed at him while simultaneously treating the large welt on his face. Naruto was the only one with a treatable injury. Sasuke just hit his head and needed some painkillers, but overall he was okay. Naruto scratched the back of his head. "Sorry Sakura-chan, I had to help sensei," he pleaded, hoping to not be beaten anymore that day. "Naruto." Kakashi leaned forward and invaded Naruto's private bubble. "What was that club you were swinging around earlier and where did it come from?" he said in an inquisitive tone. I don't really know exactly where it came from," he said slowly. "I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm pretty sure it's not over. At least that's what I was told." Kakashi leaned farther in until he was almost nose to nose with Naruto. "Someone talked to you about that thing? When?" Naruto backed up to give himself some breathing room. I don't know. There was a voice in my head. He said he was Gilgamesh. Or that I was Gilgamesh or something. I swear I don't really know. Kakashi ignored the fact that he just said he's hearing voices, but the team looked at Naruto like he had gone insane. Kakashi scratched his chin. May I see the weapon? Sure. He stood up and put his hand out in front of him. Sakura-chan, can you please back up a little because I'm afraid I don't have full control over this and I don't want it to hurt you. Sakura didn't know if she should be touched. Naruto cared for her or mad he was underestimating her, but she moved back anyway. The name of my sword is God Eater. The black hilt of the mammoth sword appeared and the blade slowly extended, this time instead of quickly, since it sensed that there was no emergency. Naruto let the rounded end of the blade sink into the ground and let go of the hilt once he was sure the blade wasn't going to fall over or sink any further. The whole team marveled at the beauty of the blade. It appeared to be a technological wonder even though it was so bulky. Kakashi stepped forward. Do you mind if I examine it, Naruto? It would only be for a moment and then I will give it right back. Kakashi was always respectful and always asked permission to use the weapon of any sword wielder because the last time he touched Yugo's sword without asking she almost chopped his balls off. He never made that mistake again. The blonde boy smirked. Sure, Kakashi-sensei. Go right ahead. Kakashi grabbed the hilt and tried to pull it up with all his might. He even tried to enhance his muscles with chakra and still the thing wouldn't budge. The red-faced Jonin appeared to have given up when he let go and turned around only to quickly pivot and grab the hilt again to try to lift it. It seemed like he was trying to surprise the blade or something. The rest of the group laughed at his expense. Naruto couldn't tell, but he thought his sensei pouted. How heavy is this thing, Naruto? Naruto thought for a second. Around 50,000 pounds. The group hit the floor in a comic-style fashion. How can you lift it then when sensei can't? Sakura yelled. I was told only I can summon it and lift it. To me it feels closer to 150 pounds. Naruto said as he lifted the sword from the ground with both hands and with quite a bit of strain threw it over his shoulders. Again his feet began to sink into the ground and the others watched in disbelief. I've heard of specialized swords, but never one like this. Kakashi said as he ran his hand across the blade. Kakashi-sensei? Is it okay if I put this away now? I'm kinda sinking into the ground. Naruto asked nervously. The silver-haired Jonin watched Naruto slowly descend for another second before speaking. Of course, Naruto. The sword sunk back into the hilt and everyone gasped. Ah, that's better. Anyways, like I was saying before, I don't think this is over. The voice said this was one of 6. He gestured to the hilt in his hand before he made it disappear as well. The team and Tazuna looked at Naruto like he was crazy. The boy is batshit nuts. He's hearing voices. The drunk bridge builder spoke up first. Naruto growled at him. Fuck you, old man. He leapt forward to brawl with the elderly man, but was caught mid-air by Kakashi. Alright, settle down you two. The one-eyed man chastised. Sasuke scoffed at the childishness of the old man and his fellow genin while Sakura yelled. Naruto, you baka. We're supposed to protect him, not hurt him. Naruto flailed his arms and legs in Kakashi's grip. I'm not gonna kill him or anything. He settled down. Just give him his just desserts, he said sheepishly. Naruto launched himself again, but found himself in an executioner's grapple by Kakashi. Tazuna, I'm going to have to ask you not to rile up my genin. Remember, we can leave you at any time. You lied to us about the mission, so we have no obligation to help you. The bridge builder scoffed, but didn't say another word. Naruto just put his head down as Kakashi let him down again. I swear I'm not lying about the voice, Kakashi-sensei, he said quietly. The silver-haired put a comforting hand on the blonde boy's shoulder. I believe you, Naruto. Really? Naruto picked his head up. Of course. He smiled at his young charge. I've seen many weird things in my life. Although I've never heard of anything like this, I won't say you are lying to me just because it's odd. Plus, this whole situation you've fallen into is in another realm of oddity that I couldn't explain if I wanted to. Kakashi chuckled and Naruto brightened up a bit. Naruto didn't realize that Kakashi was very frightened the Kyuubi was speaking to him. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto felt closer to his instructor than ever before. Just for clarity, Kakashi said curiously to try and not give away the fact that he was questioning Naruto's mental stability. What did the voice say? Naruto thought for a moment. It said boldness allowed me to bring out the God Eater. He thought a little more before speaking. Also that I have awoken one part of 6. Kakashi seemed slightly surprised. It didn't sound like the Kyuubi was trying to affect Naruto at all. So the voice didn't try to persuade you to do anything? He asked cautiously. Persuade? Naruto thought to himself. Not at all. If anything, the voice was informational. It just gave me some info about the sword. You may call me Gilgamesh for ease. He just spoke to me. He said to call him Gilgamesh. Naruto said to his friends. I think you should speak to this Gilgamesh. Kakashi said. Ask him what he wants. Naruto nodded to his instructor. Kakashi needed to get to the bottom of this as quickly as possible. He didn't have the required competency with Fuin Jutsu to fix a breach in the Kyuubi's seal, and he couldn't risk the 9 tails getting loose. What is it you want from me? Naruto thought to himself in hopes to receive an answer. I don't want anything. I have no will to persuade you. I have no ability to persuade you. I am only here as your guide should you need it. Gilgamesh answered. Naruto sighed in relief. Well, I suppose we should get started. What the hell did I get myself into, Mr. Creepy Voice Gilgamesh Man? Currently, Naruto was plopped on the ground in a meditative trance talking to his most recently acquired inner voice named Gilgamesh. They had only been speaking for a few moments, but from what Naruto could tell, the spirit was emotionless. There was no remote chance of forming any type of relationship with the being inside him because it seemed Gilgamesh lacked the ability of attachment. He was a robot, a machine designed to pump out raw data and nothing more. So your name is Gilgamesh, huh? Naruto said uncomfortably. The conversation felt forced and awkward, and he didn't really know where to begin. If that is what you wish my name to be, then it shall be so. Naruto couldn't even detect a hint of emotion. The blonde genin sighed. He had a feeling he was going to be sighing a lot through talking to this guy. Okay, so I can ask you questions about what is happening to me, right? Yes. What is your query? Gilgamesh calmly asked. Query? Naruto couldn't understand the insensitivity coming from Gilgamesh, or what the word query meant. Yes. What would you ask of me? I will answer to the best of my knowledge. Gilgamesh had the same calm voice, which was still devoid of feeling, but was somehow soothing. Naruto felt a little weird talking to himself like this. Oh, so could you explain to me what is going on? Query acknowledged. Right now we are talking to each other. Gilgamesh stated. Naruto waited for something more before he mentally face-palmed himself. I don't mean what's going on this second, I mean, sigh. Naruto was floored. He now understood that Gilgamesh truly is emotionless. The only thing he is capable of doing is answering questions in the most literal of senses. Okay, let's try this again. Can you tell me where I got this sword from? God Eater was pulled from your soul. Your defiance manifested itself physically, and God Eater is the result. Because of this, the cycle has started. Soon enough, different emotions and actions you experience will manifest themselves just as the God Eater has. Naruto was a little surprised. If he wasn't mistaken, Gilgamesh just answered more questions than he asked. Does that mean he was messing with him before when Naruto asked him what was going on? Does he actually have a will of his own? I had to ask. Do you have, I don't know, feelings or anything? Gilgamesh was silent for a moment as if he was pondering whether or not to answer. I do. Really? Then why don't you sound like it? Naruto questioned sarcastically, even though he was majorly surprised. I cannot interfere with your growth. I cannot chance you sensing my emotions and changing your course. Therefore, I will only guide you when you need it, he said sagely. Naruto sighed again. Well then, by all means guide me. The blonde boy feigned indifference, even though he was secretly happy Gilgamesh wasn't just some machine made to answer his questions. Very well. The sword spirit would not allow any amount of annoyance appear in his voice. As you develop, you will gain new swords and new abilities for each. For example, if you notice, the only way you can recall the God Eater is if it is directly in your hands. I didn't notice, but now that you mention it, I did have to hold it to bring it back. Naruto hadn't had time to practice with the sword yet, so he doesn't know all of its abilities. Yes, but eventually you can dissipate the sword and recall it back to your hand at will, even if you are not holding it. With enough practice, you will find there are many subtle intricacies to using the 6 swords of the Gilgamesh. Naruto still didn't understand why his sword came with a user's manual named Gilgamesh, but he appreciated the help. Cool. So what are the other swords and how do I get them? Gilgamesh would have smiled at the boy's excitement if he had the mouth to do so. Alas, he is only a spirit, so he resumed his aloof conversation with Naruto. At the moment you have only obtained God Eater. There are 5 more swords you will be able to unlock once you have undergone the necessary emotional duress to bring them forth. I cannot tell you what they are, what they do, or specifically how you obtain them, for it would be detrimental to your growth. Ah, come on, just tell me, Naruto whined. I cannot, for doing that may cause you to preemptively summon a sword for which you are not ready. However, there is something very important you must know immediately. One of the swords you have yet to acquire is carrying another spirit, he said in an odd tone. Naruto knew he was trying to hide something, but Gilgamesh was a brick wall of detachment. Another spirit? Like you? Naruto questioned. Gilgamesh did his best to hide his disdain from entering his voice at this accusation. He is in no way like me. The previous owner of the sword was supposed to be a hero. However, because of certain events he became a villain of the highest competence. Although he was defeated, his spirit has latched to his sword. He has followed it through time and now it rests within you. There's a villain inside me. Naruto screamed in disgust as he patted himself. I will warn you before you bring out the sword containing his spirit. But know this, Naruto was beginning to worry. If his will is stronger than yours, then he will consume your body and use it as his own. Naruto gulped. And if that happens? The blonde boy asked slowly. The spirit was silent for a moment. If that happens, you will be locked away forever and he will resume his quest. He will take this planet in the name of his calamitous mother and ride it through the cosmos. There will be nothing remaining of this earth or its people. Naruto thought about his situation for a moment. If he isn't careful, then not only will he lose his body, but it will be used to attack everyone he loves. Could he really have something that powerful inside of him? Without a single worry he cast aside his doubt. That will only be the outcome if he isn't strong enough. My will is stronger than some jerk-off mama's boy who won't let go of his sword. The blue-eyed boy mentally yelled, and Gilgamesh silently appreciated the boy's vigor. Very well. Feeling his job completed, Gilgamesh remained quiet. Hey Gilgamesh? Naruto spoke softly. How may I be of assistance? Thanks, for warning me and stuff. There was a calm silence between the two for a while. There is no need for thanks. I will do everything I can to ensure your choices are your own. As Naruto smiled, Gilgamesh basked in the warmth of the child's happiness. The boy truly was an excellent host. The Jinchuriki just laughed. You could just say you're welcome, With those final words, Naruto left his trance to return to the world of the conscious. With his container no longer listening, Gilgamesh felt like he was allowed to think freely. An excellent child indeed. Kakashi was walking down a dirt road with his blonde charge on his back. Naruto still hadn't come out of his self-induced trance yet, and the scarecrow ninja was beginning to worry, but they needed to leave for the land of waves, so Kakashi picked him up and carried him piggyback. The Cyclops ninja could still hear Naruto's faint breathing, so he at least knew the boy was alive. Still, the fear of this Gilgamesh was haunting him. If this was just a ploy by the Kyuubi, then who knows what was going to happen. He may lose Naruto, and that is something he couldn't allow. If one thing seems off about this new entity, then this mission is aborted immediately and Tazuna is on his own. You're just as much trouble as your father. He let his thoughts run to his former master. I may not have been able to help you, sensei, but I'll be damned if anyone is going to hurt your son. Naruto began to shift around on his instructor's back, so Kakashi stopped to ease him down. As soon as the Jonin set him on the ground, Naruto's eyes fluttered open to see his team looking over him. Are you okay, Naruto? Sakura may have thought he was annoying, but when her teammates pass out like he did, she reserved the right to worry. The pinkette was already down on one knee to help him up. Naruto slung his arm around her shoulder and lifted himself. He didn't need help, but any excuse to touch Sakura was worth it for him. I'm okay. Thanks, Sakura-chan. Sasuke turned around quickly, but Naruto smirked as he saw the hint of worry on his face before he spun. Once Sakura had Naruto up, she let go of him and he firmly stood on both feet. Kakashi took this time to usher him off to the side so the other two Genin and Tazuna couldn't hear their conversation. So Naruto, what can you tell me? He said lazily, but was actually very anxious. Well, Naruto thought for a second. Whoever Gilgamesh is, he doesn't mean me any harm. I didn't find out much about him, but he told me a bit about the sword. Naruto said nonchalantly. Kakashi sighed in relief. So he didn't ask you for anything? No favors for his services? He questioned. Naruto looked slightly annoyed. I don't know what you think he's trying to do, but it seems like the only thing he plans on doing is answering my questions. Kakashi waved his hands in front of his face and gave Naruto a nervous eye smile. Alright, I'm just making sure. No need to get riled up. The Cyclops man lazily drawled out. Naruto huffed and turned around to walk back to the group with Kakashi in tow. When they arrived, the silver-haired Jonin spoke up. Okay everyone, let's continue on to Wave Country, he said while ushering everyone down the path towards their destination and possible doom. It didn't take them too much longer to arrive to the boat that would take them to the wave. Once they were all aboard and started paddling towards the island, Tazuna decided now was a good time to bring up something important. Hey brat, he said to the blonde Jinchuriki as the boat gently rocked back and forth. Naruto turned to him with a pout. What do you want, old man? He said with a hiss. How much did you say that sword of yours weighs? About 50,000, right? Naruto nodded in response. Just to be clear, you know you can't take that thing out while you're indoors, right? The buildings can't handle that kind of weight. They're only made of wood, you know. Naruto hadn't thought about it, but Tazuna was right. Don't worry, I won't, he said to the old drunkard. Also, I can't let you use it while you're on my bridge either. It can't handle 50,000 pounds in point placement yet. The amount of pressure your feet would exert would tear my bridge to shreds if you took one step on it with that sword on your back, he said in a commanding tone. If the group of ninja was surprised that the old drunk could sound professional for once, they didn't show it. Fine, fine, Naruto brushed him off. Kakashi spoke up. Well, that's unfortunate because if Zabuza attacks us anywhere, it would probably be on the bridge, he said carelessly while he leaned back in the boat and read his smut. Everyone froze. Kakashi-sensei, the pink-haired girl said. He knew what she was going to say, but it's fun to play the lazy Jonin. Zabuza is dead. You killed him, Sakura said fearfully. Kakashi never raised an eye off of his book. He's not dead. That hunter ninja that took him was a fake. We probably have about. He looked to the sky and tilted his head and thought. 2 weeks before he comes back to kill Tazuna, he said as he turned another page in his smut and giggled at an especially dirty scene. The troop stared him. Why the hell are you so calm? Sakura yelled at her sensei. Naruto winced at the volume of her voice and rubbed his ears in pain. She yelled too damn much. At least this time she's yelling Kakashi and not him. He closed his book and turned to face everyone. Because we're going to be ready. Kakashi put his deluxe edition copy of Icha Icha into a special pouch on his belt. Alright, I think it's time for me to tell you a little bit your new training regimen. The Genin's faces lit up like Christmas trees at the word training. Naruto was happy because it was another chance to prove himself. Sakura was blissful because she loved to learn. And Sasuke was pleased because he enjoyed preparing himself to kill Itachi. It was a win-win for everyone. Naruto couldn't contain himself. Yak Kakashi-sensei. Finally some real training. As Kakashi looked at the young group, he had to smile under his mask. With his teaching, he knew they could go far. He may need some help with Sakura's tutelage, but he was confident in her abilities. Alright, settle down, Naruto. This is just the overview of what you'll be doing. First thing we have to do is get settled in once we make it to the island. Then we can train. Naruto crossed his arms. Ah, come on. I want to train, he said in a huff. Just shut up and let him talk. Sakura yelled at her teammate while simultaneously sharing his enthusiasm. On the down low, of course. Naruto made an over-exaggerated sad face, but didn't say anything. Kakashi took this as his cue to begin. First thing you need to know is our rotations. Every day I will take 2 of you with me to the bridge to help guard Tazuna while he continues construction. Whoever is not on guard duty will train. When the workday is over, we will meet up and have group training. Understood? The 3 genin nodded. Okay, then let's start with the group training before I get into individual tasks. He could see the coastline of their destination quickly approaching. All of you will perform the tree walking exercise together, which I will show you later today. It will help with chakra control and is an invaluable tool in many situations. Besides that, the only other team training we will do is formations and some sparring. He turned his head and looked at the blonde boy. As for individual exercises, I will start with you, Naruto. The Hyper Genin gave him a beaming smile. That sword you have is an odd addition to our group. I have training with a Nodashi, so I can give you the basics of swordplay, but we will have to find you a teacher when we return to Konoha. However, that's not the real problem. The boy nodded his head in understanding. Yeah, I know. I can't even stand on solid ground while I'm holding God Eater, let alone attack someone with it. Naruto said despairingly. Kakashi gave him an eye smile. That's okay, Naruto. I can fix that. The blonde boy's spirits picked up right away. Really? How? Once you learn the tree walking exercise, I'll tell you. He said to the boy, knowing it would spur him on to finish the chakra control training as quick as possible. I'll be done before you can blink. Believe it, Naruto said as he threw his fist into the air. Kakashi smiled and turned to the pinkette. Okay, Sakura. She turned to him with an excited look on her face. I'm going to teach you genjutsu. Just a few basic illusions at first, but they are critical in our defense. If Zabuza or the hunter ninja with him somehow get around the offensive force of our team, your genjutsu will be Tazuna's only protection. Even a small illusion will give you the time needed to escape, or at least buy some time to make a new plan. She was proud and nervous that if all else were to fail, she was the hinge-pin in their plans. Hi, Kakashi-sensei. He looked to the black-haired Uchiha. Sasuke. The onyx-eyed boy looked his sensei in the eye. I will teach you some higher-level mid-range fire jutsu. The three of you together will make an unbeatable combo. He reassured them with his eye-smile jutsu. Kakashi was going to train these kids right. He didn't want their time as a team to be like his was. Full of pain and heartache. Obito. Rin. Sensei. Please protect them. Shortly after the training regimen was set, the boat reached the dock and the group set out to Tazuna's abode while he gave them a small tour of his village. Within the hour, the team was already outside Tazuna's house training. After Kakashi showed them the tree walking exercise, it only took Sakura 20 minutes to get it down. Naruto appreciated her unbelievable control over her chakra. He shot her a few compliments in between the glares that he sent towards Sasuke. The loner Uchiha would just scoff and continue his training, which he didn't realize would only drive Naruto harder. Even with Naruto's unbelievable persistence, he was still losing to Sasuke. He noticed that at the moment he was at least 5 feet below the top-rated genin of the year. If his lazy Jonin sensei didn't walk off, he could have asked him for a tip, but for now he's got no help. Wait, Sakura's already got it. She must know how to help. He looked over to see the pink-haired girl silently watching her black-haired crush with a blush splayed across her face. Naruto jumped to the girl. Hey, Sakura-chan. Ah. She snapped out of her trance and fell back onto the ground. Don't scare me like that, baka, she said as she held her hand against her chest to feel her rapidly beating heart. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Sorry, I was just wondering if you could help me with my training. She raised an eyebrow. Sure, I guess. What do you need? He gave her a wide grin. How'd you do it? I can't figure it out for the life of me. She giggled a bit until she saw his pouty face. Okay, do you know how chakra works? He scratched his head. Well, yeah, maybe not the textbook definition, but I understand the idea of how it works, he said with a happy face. She smiled at him. Well, since chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energies, I figured out that a balance between the two parts is all that I needed. The balance depends on the total energies of each person, so until you find your own center you will have to keep practicing. Once I had the correct percentages, I concentrated chakra at my feet and used it as an adhesive to cling to surfaces. It should work the same way for you if you can find your balance point, she said as she started walking towards the tree he had been using to train. If you look at your tree, we can tell what needs. Sakura gasped when she saw what Naruto did to his oak. She ran her hands across the deep ugly scars he left in the wake of his training and gave Naruto a bewildered look. The entire tree was trashed and most certainly would not make it through the rest of Naruto's training. What? Naruto asked sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head uncomfortably. Some of the breaks in the tree were big enough to fit her fist through. How much chakra does he have? She noticed she must look pretty stupid as she caught herself staring at Naruto. Oh, as you can see, you left chakra scars. She turned to the tree and trailed off again as she got lost in thinking about the amount of power her blonde friend held. Naruto waved a hand in front of her face. Hello? She blushed in embarrassment as she was caught drifting off again. The pinkette cleared her throat. You left these chakra scars. See? She pointed to the deep gashes and he nodded in kind. Because of that we know you used way too much chakra when you tried to cling to the tree. Next time try to reel back your chakra output and see what happens." Naruto nodded and moved to his starting position under the tree. With a quick crossing of his hands he was ready to try climbing again. He dashed 7 feet higher before he shot off the trunk this time. Sakura smirked at his results. "I'm so awesome," she thought to herself. The second Naruto hit the ground he was on Sakura like white on rice. She was wrapped up in the biggest, warmest hug she could imagine. "You're awesome, Sakura-chan," the blonde genin said as he swayed her around in his arms. "I know, now put me down before I kick your ass," she screamed at him as she flailed around in his arms. He set her down and gave her a huge grin before dashing off to train some more. Sakura sat back down to watch Sasuke again, but from then on she threw a couple glances Naruto's way. Before long a routine had been set. 1 person trains and 2 guard Tazuna. Once the workday was done the whole team trained together. Kakashi was impressed at their teamwork as they continued to make huge strides. Even Sasuke was becoming a team player. To everyone's surprise, shortly after Sakura helped Naruto, he finished the tree climbing exercise. No one thought he would finish before the black-haired prodigy would, but lo and behold Naruto was sitting on top of the tree grinning at Sakura as she smiled back at him from the ground. Sasuke hadn't been making much progress, but instead of being a little emo baby he actually asked Naruto for help. It shocked everyone, but Naruto helped him without patronizing or making fun of him, and shortly after that Sasuke finished the exercise as well. Kakashi approached Naruto soon after he learned to climb trees without using hands and told him the secret to using the God Eater. "Naruto, hi Kakashi-sensei," he questioned excitedly because he knew it was time to learn how to use his massive sword without sinking into the ground. "Now that you can concentrate chakra at your feet you are 1 step closer to standing on solid ground with your sword. Take what you know about tree climbing and expand on that principle," he said to the young boy. "How?" Naruto asked. The one-eyed man flicked him on the forehead. "Do just as I said. Expand the chakra at your feet to cover more area. The larger the area you cover, the more your weight is dispersed. The reason you sink is because your feet put the weight in one place and the ground can't handle that kind of concentrated pressure. Expand your chakra to cover more surface area and your problem is solved." He rubbed his chin in thought. "I still don't think you can use your sword in a house or on the bridge though. Neither one of those places can handle 50,000 more pounds of weight no matter where you disperse it to. Unless you gain enough experience to cover the ground under the house." The sensei smiled at his student's back as Naruto didn't even say a word before dashing off to train. In the distance he could hear the blonde boy faintly yelled to him, "Thanks Kakashi-sensei." And so things continued like this. After about a week and a half Naruto had picked up a few sword skills, but nothing major because Kakashi didn't know how to use such a large sword. Sakura learned some genjutsu that affect chakra sense, hearing, sight, and smell. And Sasuke picked up some nice fire-based jutsu for his arsenal. It took a full 2 weeks before any more trouble started. It was Naruto's turn to train while the rest of his team guarded Tazuna. He had just finished up some training with God Eater and was returning to Tsunami's house for some grub when 2 thugs showed up. One had clown makeup on and the other was shirtless and covered in scars. What Naruto noticed first is they were both carrying swords, but it seemed like they didn't have much, if any, formal training with them. "Hey boy, where's the lady and the kid that live here? We have some," they chuckled, business to discuss with them. It was easy to tell these guys were up to no good. He could almost guarantee they worked for Gato. "They're not here right now. Maybe you should just discuss this business with me," Naruto said as he sent them a glare. Both of their faces hardened. "You better watch it you little shit or we just might," one of the men yelled as they both pulled out swords. Naruto sighed and walked towards them with both hands in the pockets of his orange jacket. "Hey back off kid," the blonde boy didn't slow his gait. "I said back off or we'll cut you." They threatened apprehensively as they sloppily took their stances. Naruto stopped 5 feet in front of them and extended his right arm like he was going to shake their hands. The men were so confused they slightly lowered their swords to look at each other. They didn't even think twice when Naruto took one more step forward. "God Eater." The 2 thugs watched as a hilt appeared in the hand they thought was meant for them to shake. They had no time to react as a 5-foot mechanical battering ram shot out of the hilt and rested right between them. Before either of the men could move or retaliate, the genin simultaneously released the sword and jumped into the air. Ah! The two wannabe samurais screamed as the giant sword Naruto was holding hit the ground and formed a crater, into which they promptly fell. As the men at the bottom of the crater squirmed around trying to recover, Naruto pounced and knocked them out with a few quick punches to the jaw. The blue-eyed genin grabbed the hilt of his sword and dismissed it before tying up both of the thugs. If these guys are here, that must mean Gato is attacking. Naruto started jumping towards the bridge. I had to help my team. Bridge. Kakashi saw the ice mirrors form around Sasuke and he worriedly moved to help his stranded genin. Before he could even take a single step towards the dome, a giant cleaver swung across his midsection, causing him to jump back and regroup. Damn, I can't help Sasuke until I take care of Zabuza. The Cyclops quickly formulated a plan. Sakura, stay by Tazuna and guard him, he yelled to the pinkette standing in front of the bridge builder. She nodded back. Hi Kakashi-sensei. The small girl moved into a defensive position and pushed Tazuna as far as she could away from the fight. The man with a giant cleaver stepped forward. Ah, copycat, are you having this little girl do all the work for you? He laughed as mist began to slowly creep around them, reducing visibility. Kakashi glared. I'm not letting you get away this time, Zabuza, he said as he unveiled his Sharingan. The fog created by Zabuza had now almost entirely covered the bridge-turned-battleground. Oh, no one's going anywhere, Kakashi. The mist had now become so thick that the scarecrow ninja could no longer see his enemy. Of that I am positive. Zabuza's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, almost as if he was a part of the mist itself. Kakashi could no longer sense his enemy. It didn't matter though. It's obvious to him where Zabuza is going to strike because the Jonin knew his opponent is going to do the same thing he would do in this situation. Complete his mission. Tazuna. Kakashi immediately rushed over to Sakura and the bridge builder to sense for his enemy. Almost as soon as he arrived by his genin's side, the man with the giant cleaver swung his sword in an attempt to have everyone there. He quickly pulled out a reinforced kunai and stopped the giant sword from cutting the crew into pieces, but received a cut on his arm as compensation. Once Zabuza heard his sword cut into flesh, he quickly jumped away into the mist, again disappearing from sight and sense. Well, it seems that little eye of yours can't work when you can't see me, huh, Kakashi? The invisible voice taunted. Oh, and what's this? He said as he wiped the edge of his blade and watched the blood drip off his fingers. Looks like I nicked ya. He guffawed as loud as he could to add to his taunt. Kakashi listened to the echoing voice of Zabuza with a smirk on his face. Thank you for making this easy for me. Kuchivyose no jutsu. The one-eyed man yelled as he slammed his hand into the ground. The faint noise of soft growls and padded feet ran through the mist, followed by a loud yell. Raw! Kakashi moved towards Zabuza's scream as the mist slowly started to clear away. After a few moments, the thick fog cleared enough to show Zabuza caught between the large jowls of four ferocious dogs. Kakashi stepped forward with an outstretched hand to form a raikiri and deliver the finishing blow. He didn't want to waste any more time with Zabuza because he knew his genin needed help. A short while ago Kakashi felt Naruto's chakra move into the dome, but he still wasn't sure if it would be enough. They were only genin and he was quite sure the hunter ninja was around a jonin level. Zabuza, you have attempted to kill me and you have threatened my genin. For that I cannot let. Boom. The one-eyed jonin was interrupted as the small amount of mist that was left over from Zabuza's jutsu was blown away by a large explosion. Kakashi turned his head in fear as two black spiraling towers of chakra shot into the sky about 100 feet to his left. However, the peaks of energy weren't what frightened him. It was the point of origin. Sasuke. Naruto. 1,000 scenarios played through Kakashi's head. Is this the hunter ninja's jutsu? He quickly dismissed the thought for a more plausible one. The Kyuubi has broken free. The only rationalization he had for this conclusion was the pure evil that was emanating from the twin spirals. The pillars of shadow had now reached the sky and the once previously lighted area became coldly dark. Such thick clouds formed above his head that he could no longer tell if the sun was ever out. Kakashi moved forward to quickly kill Zabuza so he could save the genin, but before he could budge an object lightly grazed his face and fell to the ground. Kakashi dropped to one knee and picked up the offending item. A feather? In his hand he twirled a black feather back and forth. The silver-haired Jonin looked up to the sky and gasped. What is going on? Black feathers poured down around him. Sasuke was having the fight of his life. This hunter ninja was good. Too good. Nothing he tried seemed to work. Even if he managed to crack an ice mirror, it was quickly regenerated. Damn, the best I can do is hold him off. He's just too fast. Sasuke thought to himself as he dodged another wave of senbon. At this rate he's going to get me. The Uchiha let out a loud yell as 3 metal needles were embedded into his leg. The black-haired boy quickly pulled them out and dodged the next set of projectiles the hunter ninja threw at him. Sasuke looked around as the robed hunter appeared in every mirror that surrounded him. You may as well give up, Haku said emotionlessly. Your potential is great, but at this point my powers far outweigh yours. You cannot win. Sasuke growled in response and whipped a kunai at the mirror on his left. The kunai sunk into the reflection of his enemy, but after a moment it is pushed out and the mirror rebuilt itself. It is futile. The reflections all stated as they readied their senbon for a final assault. Sasuke prepared himself for the onslaught he knew was coming his way until he heard the familiar life-saving scream of his teammate. Raw, a spinning Naruto holding God Eater made his way onto the scene, destroying 3 mirrors in the process. Before the blonde boy hit the ground he dispersed his sword. Phew, that was close. Don't want to exceed the weight capacity, haha, he said while comically wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Sasuke stared at him angrily. Dobi, he said with his teeth clenched. Naruto turned to him with a blank expression on his face. Why didn't you attack from the outside while I assaulted from the inside? Sasuke yelled. Naruto scoffed in return. Sorry for being worried about my teammate, jackass, he said sarcastically. You son of a. Sasuke caught himself and calmed down so he could explain the situation they were now in. Whatever. What you need to know is that this guy is very fast. He moves from mirror to mirror while attacking with senbon. He pointed to the spot where Naruto came crashing in. The mirrors he destroyed were already reforming. And if we somehow destroy a mirror, he has the ability to repair them. The only option we have is to catch him when he moves, but unfortunately I can't even see him. He is too fast. Naruto scratched his chin and after a moment of silent deliberation he put his finger in the air as if he just formulated a plan. Sasuke looked at him expectantly. Well, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna wing it. The black-haired boy dropped his head in anger. And since this bridge can't support the weight of God Eater, I guess I only have one choice. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 30 Naruto clones formed around him and Sasuke couldn't help but to appreciate his teammates' chakra levels. The clones attempted to attack every mirror at the same time to find the enemy ninja, but every time they got close they were destroyed by a hail of senbon. Naruto repeated his clone attack 4 times before Sasuke spoke up. Naruto, stop. Attacking every mirror like this is a good plan, but it's not working. The black-haired boy put his hand on his friend's shoulder and pulled out a few senbon that were lodged in his back. Naruto glared up at him. I won't give up. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto tried again, but the results were just like they were before. Naruto came crashing down to Sasuke's feet riddled with senbon. Why won't he ever quit? Sasuke looked down at the blonde boy as he began to rise to his feet again and the Uchiha clenched his fist in anger. What am I doing? I can't just sit here while Naruto outperforms me. I am an Uchiha. It's time for me to act like it. He watched Naruto attack and get beat down once more. This time the blonde genin wasn't quickly rising to his feet. Naruto! Sasuke yelled as he quickly went to his friend's aid. Naruto was breathing heavy from receiving a senbon that grazed his lung. He had no idea the Kyuubi had already started to heal him, but that was beside the point. The black-haired boy hovered over his blonde counterpart and quickly removed as many senbon as he could. Looks like that last one really got me, huh? He rasped out to his onyx-eyed teammate. Sasuke stared down at his friend in frustration. How dare you? Naruto quirked an eyebrow because he thought Sasuke was talking to him. He wasn't. The black-haired boy looked up at the hunter ninja in the mirrors and his face reflected nothing but pure rage. The masked ninja Haku looked back at the Uchiha. We are shinobi. We are tools. You should realize that death is a part of our existence. It is the reason for which we were created. Haku said in his machine-like voice. Now it is time for you both to die. He formed more ice senbon in his hands and began to strike. The hunter threw the ice shards and with no trouble at all Sasuke deflected them. As the enemy tried to move to another mirror, Sasuke noticed something odd. He could see. The robed ninja was no longer a blur. In fact, now the enemy seemed to be moving in slow motion. The Uchiha didn't even realize his bloodline had finally awakened and Tsutomu spun in the direction of his enemy. After a few rounds with the rogue ninja, Sasuke realized was holding his own, but the constant lookout for his downed friend made it hard for him to effectively counter Haku. Just as he feared, a wave of senbon made their way towards Naruto's prone body. Shit! In one swift move, Sasuke threw a kunai into Haku's leg and covered his teammate with his own body. The dueling ninja both hit the ground with a groan of pain. Sasuke fell onto his stomach with his head turned towards Naruto and deep cerulean eyes met with dark onyx. The blonde boy felt pressure well up in his chest as he lay next to his battered friend. His first and best friend. Sasuke had blood dripping from everywhere it could escape. Besides from the multiple cuts, the thick crimson substance was seeping out of his nose, eyes, and ears almost as if there was a pressure in his head pushing it out. Why? Naruto asked lightly. I don't know, Sasuke said between pained and ragged breaths. My body just moved on its own. The Sharingan user's eyes began to close. Sorry, Dobi, he said before his eyelids draped shut for what Naruto thought was the last time. Naruto couldn't have known Sasuke wasn't dead. He couldn't have known that the robed hunter ninja actually didn't want to hurt or kill them. It almost makes one feel sorry for Haku. He just didn't know what was coming. The wide blue eyes of the young genin darted back and forth in a panic before they locked onto the slowly recovering Haku, who just made his way into an ice mirror. You! Naruto screamed as he began to convulse in a seizure-like frenzy. His anger and rage were so strong. He had never felt like this before. Haku's reflection was in every mirror, and as Naruto looked at his friend's killer silently watching him, he had no way to describe the pure scorn he felt for the man. Hate filled him, not just anger anymore. Rage couldn't describe it either. What he was enduring was so much stronger than anything he had ever experienced. It was like pure concentrated loathing poured off of Naruto as he gazed at his enemy. The blonde boy's body lurched forward. Stay down or I will kill you as well, Haku said to hopefully scare the boy into staying on the ground. Naruto stood up, his bangs covering his eyes, and the senbon-wielding ninja prepared some ice darts to incapacitate the Jinchuriki if he wouldn't comply with his wishes. The voice of Gilgamesh returned. Do you remember what I told you about the other spirit? This sword was not meant to be awoken so soon. His container's hate was too powerful. Gilgamesh's pleas went unheard. It is time. I hope your will is stronger than his. A new voice made its way into Naruto's thoughts. Unlike God Eater, which sounded like a crescendo of 1,000 voices ready to revolt, this time there was only one voice. It was a deep, calculating voice that was so inviting it was as if Naruto couldn't resist it. I will never be a memory. Naruto's hands were covered in a sick darkness. His aura produced a mist of suppressing black mist, which began to creep around the battleground, staining whatever it touched. Haku strained his ears to hear what Naruto was saying as the young man's shadowed hand reached forward. Masamune. In an instant Naruto was surrounded by what appeared to be a solid black orb as two spirals of power shot out around him and into the sky. Haku stared in awe of the raw power that the black globe in front of him exuded. Lightning crackled around the sphere as the bridge shook from the force of the spirals shooting into the heavens. As the pillars began to recede back into their focal point, the black bubble began to change shape. From what Haku could tell, the orb was beginning to become more human in form. First arms, then legs, and finally a head protruded from the blackness, until ultimately a fully grown man stood inside the mirrors. The man standing center stage looked nothing like Naruto. Haku quickly glanced around to see if he could find the blonde boy, but there was nothing. He could no longer sense the Jinchuriki at all. In place of the boy now stood a 6'2" man outfitted with garments unlike anything Haku has ever seen. His clothes seemed to be made of some sort of black leather, but the designs held no nationality or creed. His long silver hair sat elegantly across the white pauldrons adorning his shoulders as the darkened sky set beautifully against his pale, unmarred skin. The look this man held was somewhat effeminate, but he reeked of raw power. The masked ninja could tell that, underneath this newcomer's skinny frame and porcelain skin, there was a powerhouse of energy. Everything about the silver-haired man screamed regality as he stood with perfect posture and an unflinching face of covered emotion. If Haku didn't know he was in deep shit, he would have sat a while longer to enjoy the man's features, but now that he was in real danger, he had to remove the threat. The tall man looked down at his hands and turned them back and forth. "It appears my will is stronger than the boy's." The man's deep voice reverberated off of the ice mirrors, startling Haku into an attack. The hunter ninja threw a barrage of ice senbon at the newcomer in hopes of injuring him. The silver-haired man stared Haku down with his green, cat-slitted eyes as the masked hunter threw his senbon at him. Haku couldn't see a hint of doubt or hesitation inside the man's cold, lifeless orbs as the ice shards came speeding towards his chest. A stirring on the backside of the silver-haired beauty caught Haku's attention. In the blink of an eye, all of his senbon were deflected by a single large black wing jutting out of the cat-eyed man's back. Raven feathers fell to the ground as the man slowly pulled his stunning wing behind him. The two warriors locked eyes and Haku could feel the dreadful stare that meant his certain doom. "You're a pest," the man quietly said as his wing shot out straight behind him in an arc and broke an entire side of ice mirrors. Haku watched in terror as the man casually swept his wing across the arena, destroying every single mirror like he was brushing dust off of his shoulder. Kakashi saw the wing stick out of the dome of mirrors and then proceed to destroy everything in the vicinity. However, instead of finding a possessed Kyuubi Naruto, he found a man clad in black leather standing in the spot he thought he felt Naruto's chakra. Kakashi confusedly looked around for his blonde genin. He could swear he was just here a moment ago, but now all he could feel was a terrible aura coating his senses. He abandoned his search for Naruto for the time being to concentrate on the new man in front of him. Kakashi didn't know what was going on, but he knew it was bad. An unconscious Haku came crashing down in front of the one-eyed Jonin. It appears that as the pale-skinned man destroyed the mirrors, he must have launched the hunter ninja away like a rocket in the process. Kakashi looked up to find the long-haired man walking out of the wreckage he had caused. The dome had been turned to dust under the might of his wing as shining specks of what was left of the mirrors swirled around the pale man's frame. The Jonin looked behind the man and saw an unconscious Sasuke who appeared to not be breathing. "Who are you and what have you done to my genin?" Kakashi yelled. The skinny man gave a small creepy smile and held his hand forward. "Masamune." His deep voice cut to the bone. A black cloth-bound hilt formed from nothing in his palm and milliseconds later a 7-foot katana shot out. The new sword gleamed in eerie silver and looked polished to a mirror sheen, but in its reflection Kakashi didn't see himself, he only saw his own death. "Sin." With that word a black chakra began to form around the man and he began to float above them. Kakashi stared on as the darkness whipped violently around. He didn't notice it right away, but above the one-eyed ninja's head was a golden halo. Everyone had one. Tazuna, Sakura, Zabuza, Haku, Kakashi, and even his ninja dogs now had a shining crown hovering a foot above their heads. The only people who didn't have one were the one-winged man and the seemingly dead Sasuke. The frightened people hysterically tried to remove them from above their skulls only to find that they could not. Kakashi had no other choice. He had to attack the man before he finished whatever it was he was doing. He leapt towards him, but it was too late. The black chakra suddenly died down and with it went all sound. Everyone on the bridge, no matter how far they were away, could hear the man as he spoke his next words. "Harvest Angel." The instant he muttered his last word it felt like life itself had been forcibly ripped from their bodies. No one was left standing. The summons poofed away leaving Zabuza panting on the ground with the rest of the group. As Kakashi laid on the ground gasping for air he tried to comprehend what just happened. "Every ounce of my chakra gone. The only thing left is my life chakra. I can barely move," he thought to himself as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a soldier pill. He popped it in his mouth and felt his chakra begin to slowly return. With labored breaths Kakashi got on all fours. Before he could stand he heard the soft thump of rubber soles hitting the bridge and as he looked forward he saw a pair of black boots standing 2 feet in front of him. Slowly he lifted his head until caught the indifferent stare of the pale-skinned man. There was no doubt in his mind as to what was coming next. "Stubborn I see." the long-haired man said as he lifted his sword above his head to strike. Kakashi tried to fight, but it was useless. He was going to die bowing his head to a man he doesn't even know. He was seconds away from death and he had no chakra to retaliate, nor did he have the will. It was then Kakashi had a savior. Haha, thanks boy. The one-eyed ninja looked up at his executioner to see his attention diverted to another side of the bridge. He turned to see none other than Gato standing in front of at least 100 armed thugs ready to overtake them. You took care of all my business for me. Thanks, but now it's your turn to die. The short man had no idea what he was getting into. The skinny silver-haired man paused for a moment before he started to walk towards the army of thugs. You are traitors, he said, causing some of the men to tremble. Gato smirked. We're not traitors, just businessmen. He guffawed as the men readied their weapons. The man's pace increased slightly and his sword moved to his side. You abandoned this planet and have betrayed it. You are traitors? And mother would like me to kill you. Gato doesn't normally feel the need to defend himself, but today felt different. He wasn't sure quite why though. I told you it's just business. What part of that is not getting through to you? He yelled. It's irrelevant anyways. You're gonna die with the rest of them. It seemed the silver-haired man ignored the short tyrant as he spoke again. But do not fret, for soon you will return to the planet and become a part of something greater, a part of me. He said as he stopped 20 feet in front of the group. The cat-eyed man stared them down for what felt like an eternity before simply turning around and walking back towards Kakashi without saying a word. Kakashi looked at the man in surprise. Idle threats? No, something's wrong. Before he could finish his thought, he heard a wave of blood crash in the direction of Gato. With wide eyes he looked at the havoc that had been wrought to the businessmen. The scene was gruesome. Where 100 fully grown men once stood, there is now only a 50-foot pile of limbs and torsos. There were legs, arms, hands, chests, heads, and other body parts all haphazardly thrown into a heap. Blood gushed from the severed divisions as the crimson substance poured from the pile of flesh and flooded Kakashi's feet. A literal waterfall of blood fell off of the bridge, causing the river to turn an ugly shade of red. The seasoned Jonin paled at the sight. It is unfortunate, but he has seen worse than this. Shit, I didn't see him move. The lack of chakra dulled his senses, and because of this Kakashi couldn't even keep up with the speed of a chunin at the moment. The Cyclops turned his head when he heard Sakura and Tazuna retch. They were both trying to crawl away from the encroaching blood coming from the mountain of mutilation. It was much too early for her to see something like this, but she is going to have to toughen up if she wants to make it as a ninja. Still, he didn't want this for his genin. A maniacal laugh caught Kakashi's attention. Oh man, Zabuza spoke up from his position on the ground as he looked Kakashi in the eye. In our fight when I said no one was going anywhere, I never thought it would include me. He laughed again and turned to lie on his back. What a way to go, he said in a melancholy tone. A soft thump was heard as the demon of the mist's head dropped to the ground in compliance with his fate. Kakashi knew what the Jonin of the mist was feeling. At any other time they both would have risen to fight this monstrosity, but their willingness to fight seemed to drain with their chakra. All that is left in them now is despair. The Jonin watched the pale man approach him. His slow pace made it feel like he was mocking him one last time before he killed him, and the uncaring eyes of the silver-haired death machine showed Kakashi that he was the next victim of this holocaust. Then, for no apparent reason, he walked right past Kakashi. He was so certain of his death, and now the man didn't seem to care at all. He confusedly watched the long silver hair sway at his enemy's back and wondered why he was showing mercy until the sound of a young man coughing filled his ears. Sasuke, the black-haired Uchiha, was finally beginning to catch his breath after it had been slowed to almost nothing by Haku's senbon. He still wasn't conscious, but his body began to shake as it regained mobility, which was enough to tip off the pale man that he was still amongst the living. Something he would soon correct. It seems you have survived, the man said as he stopped in front of the genin and heaved his long thin blade above his head. Pity, Sasuke-kun, Sakura screamed as the sword began to descend upon her crush. Sasuke's eyes snapped open. Naruto, he yelled to his transformed friend, and the sword paused a foot from his face. The man growled and chopped the sharp weapon down again in hopes of finishing the Sharingan user, but again his arm wouldn't let him do it. Over and over he tried to bring down the might of Masamune upon Sasuke's head, but every time it was stopped, until finally a strong red and blue chakra surrounded the man's entire left arm. It appeared that this new chakra was suppressing the power of the silver-haired killer because the sword he was holding was forcibly shoved back into its hilt. He didn't panic or get angry. He only observed his chakra-covered arm and let loose a frightening half-smile as he got on one knee and dipped closer to the black-haired genin. He was so close he almost touched noses with Sasuke, and it was beginning to frighten the boy. "I will return for all of you," he said, quiet enough so only the black-haired genin could hear before slowly standing and resuming his regal posture. He gave everyone one last dreadful look, promising his impending return as his wing wrapped around his body. As soon as the large appendage fully encased him, it dissolved in a shower of black feathers, leaving a weakened Naruto falling to the ground. Sasuke was confused about the situation he had just awoken to, but he knew Naruto was falling and needed help. He hadn't even seen the bodies of the bandits yet. He quickly reached forward and caught his plummeting friend. "Thanks, Teme," Naruto said in a weary voice as the raven-haired boy set him down. Kakashi hobbled his way over to his two genin. "Are you two alright?" They both looked at him and nodded. "What just happened?" the one-eyed man said as he looked at Naruto. The blonde boy mustered up some strength and leaned forward. "Gilgamesh told me not to do it, but I was just so angry." Small tinks were heard as Sasuke pulled the senbon out of his skin and they hit the hard bridge. "I needed to use a new sword because God Eater would destroy the bridge. I didn't think I had a choice." Kakashi scratched his chin. "So a sword made you transform?" "Not the sword. There is a spirit inside the sword that took control of me. I thought I could fight him off, but I was wrong," Naruto said with tears in his eyes. "You have no idea what he wanted to do." "It's okay, Naruto," Kakashi said as he moved forward and put his hand on the blonde's shoulder. He looked to the other genin. "Sasuke, if you feel up to it, could you please check on Sakura and Tazuna?" The Uchiha was still highly confused about what was going on, and he didn't want to leave his distraught friend just yet, at least not until he got some answers, but he complied. "Hi, Kakashi-sensei." He stood up and left, but gave Naruto a quick look. "Thanks, Dobi," he said as he turned to leave. Naruto would have responded, but Kakashi cut him off with a stern stare. "Naruto, what exactly happened? I felt the chakra that was pouring off of your arm before, so don't lie to me because I'll know," he said seriously. They were so wrapped up in their conversation they didn't hear Sasuke puking as he laid eyes on what was left of the bandits. Naruto looked down, ashamed of himself. "The Kyuubi talked to me." Naruto waited for a gasp or some sort of reaction to the news, but his sensei looked like he was expecting that answer and sat quietly waiting for the boy to continue. "Together we fought through the evil spirit's power and I took control back. Look at me, Naruto." The boy lifted his head to lock onto his sensei's one visible eye. "This is very important. What did the Kyuubi say?" He put both his hands on Naruto's shoulders and held the boy in place. "Nothing really. Just that he was sorry and that this was recomp. Recompense?" Kakashi said confusedly. "Yeah, recompense. And then he used his chakra to help me force the sword away." Kakashi released the boy's shoulder to sit back and the Jonin lowered his head in thought. "Recompense? Really?" Naruto heard him mumble a few other unintelligible questions to himself. "It helped?" he said under his breath. Kakashi never thought the Kyuubi would ever willingly help anyone or thing but itself. This goes directly against what happened the day of Naruto's birth. Why would it go from trying to destroy all of Konoha to helping the son of the man who sealed him? Let alone apologize to him. 1,000 thoughts ran through his head. "I will have to speak with the Hokage personally about this." He didn't have time to ponder the situation as his musings were cut into by Sasuke's voice. "Naruto, could you come here?" Sasuke yelled from his position next to Sakura. "Hold on," Naruto yelled back. "Kakashi-sensei, do you still need me for anything?" "Huh? Oh, no. We can talk more about this later. Thanks," the blonde said as he slowly stood with some help from Kakashi. Kakashi didn't say anything, but he was certain Naruto's voice was lower than it used to be. Also, Naruto looked quite a bit different. "What is happening to you, Naruto?" He will talk to the Hokage about this as well, but for now he needed to take care of some unfinished business with Zabuza and his apprentice. Naruto hobbled over to Sasuke to see what was so important that it couldn't wait until later. As he arrived, Sasuke shuffled to the side to show a weeping Sakura clutching her shins as tightly as she was able. "Sakura-chan?" He clumsily fell to one knee in front of her. The blonde boy reached forward and put his hand on her shoulder. Her glistening emeralds lifted and bore into his ocean blue eyes. Just as breathtaking as ever. Naruto couldn't help but think she was still so beautiful even though she was crying. The Jinchuriki glanced at the heap of bodies behind her and frowned. He hadn't noticed it right away, but Sakura's entire backside was covered in blood that wasn't hers. It was then he realized it was his fault she was crying. He was the one who did this. Naruto knew he was the one who killed all those men because he was forced to watch as a prisoner in his own body while the man sliced through them like butter. It made him sick to know how he was used, but right now he only felt sadness for having exposed his first crush to something so horrible. "I'm so sorry, Sakura-chan, She leapt forward and caught him in a bone-crushing hug. Naruto fell onto his ass as she wrapped her arms around his neck. Sasuke took a knee beside Naruto and Sakura. "She was worried about you," the black-haired boy said just before he was pulled to the pink-head and blonde by his collar. Naruto and Sakura put their arms around Sasuke and each other and squeezed as hard as they could. They were so happy everyone was okay they didn't even care Sasuke wasn't hugging them back. He actually was, but they couldn't tell because he didn't squeeze as hard as them. After a few moments they finally let go of each other and Sakura spoke. "You don't need to apologize, Naruto. Just tell me it won't happen again," she said with a pleading look in her eyes as she wiped the tears off of her cheeks. Sakura was honestly scared of the events that just occurred. To be truthful, she started crying because of the massacre, but as the man came to strike down Sasuke, the only thing she found she was truly afraid of was losing her friends. And although she is still traumatized and probably scarred for the rest of her life, she put up a brave front for her teammates. It made it easier for her to know that the man didn't kill Kakashi or the rest of Team 7. He didn't even kill Tazuna. Technically he saved them, and vicariously Naruto did too, which Sakura silently appreciated him for. Still, that pile of dead bodies showed her how close she was to the end, and it scared her. Theoretically, this insane man single-handedly accomplished their entire mission and removed a tyrant. The irony is almost debilitating. The world is now a better place because of a man who wants to destroy the world. It is the definition by example. She never actually feared Naruto before, but now her feelings were changing in more ways than one. Sakura still didn't fear the boy, but the man inside him was another story. She had only caught a glimpse of the killer, but one thing is for certain. He was gorgeous. Insane, but gorgeous. This brought her attention to Naruto's appearance. As she looked at the blonde boy, she noticed something new. He looked different than before. The features in his face were more defined, almost as if his cheek and jawbones had moved slightly into a sharper look. On top of that, his hair was slightly longer and lighter, especially around the bangs area. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew how it looked, and it was good. Without the little bit of baby fat on his face, Naruto had a skinnier physique instead of his earlier medium build. She dared to call him hot, but now he was more along the lines of what she would consider beautiful. She quickly shook the thoughts of her blonde teammate from her head. Naruto gave her a sad smile. "Never again," he said too quietly. The only thing Sasuke heard was, "I will return for all of you." The Kyuubi no Kitsune had not blinked for days. He doesn't need to blink anyways since he is a being of pure chakra, but that isn't the point. For the past 3 days he has sat in his own cage staring at the latest arrival. He never moved, he never flinched, and least of all his eyes never wavered from his new guest. The Kyuubi had to be cautious around the spirit of the Masamune lest he escape again. Although the man was now inside the cage with him and effectively sealed by the Shikafujin, there was no guarantee that he would remain locked up without the Kyuubi watching him. The demon simply didn't know enough about the man to chance taking his eyes off of him. On the other hand, the silver-haired man sat in a cross-legged position with his eyes closed. He didn't care the nine-tailed fox was constantly watching him. It wouldn't matter in the end because the result would be the same. He will escape. It is only a matter of time. You are a clever beast. Sealing me inside your cage with you. The Kyuubi didn't respond. He just stood towering over the pale man with the same unblinking stare. The man opened his cat-slit eyes. It won't matter what you do. At some point your attention will be averted and I will resume control of the boy. You cannot lock me away forever. The deep voice of the leather-clad man oppressed the large fox demon. I don't need to watch you forever. Just long enough, the Kyuubi said with a snarl as he bore his sharp teeth with a wide grin. What are you implying? The man snapped back. The seal on my cage is special. You must have not felt it yet, but the boy is absorbing our powers. Soon we will be nothing, but in addition to the strength of our container. Of course the man felt it. It was barely anything, but there was a drain on his powers. It would still take years to fully absorb him, and if he were to take over at some point before then his powers would return to him in full, so he wasn't worried. And you willingly accept this fate? The great Kyuubi has planned to die in obscurity? The man questioned without raising his voice. I owe the boy far more than just my own life. The Kyuubi said with a killer grin. And that's why I'm giving him yours as well. A deep laugh rang through the cell as the man calmly sat in the center of the cage. When I take over this body, I will torture you, and when I'm done I will absorb what scraps of sanity you have left. It was a promise, not a threat. The fox demon cringed. You will not win. He is stronger than you think. He won't lose to you a second time. The fox had faith in his jailer. He had already seen Naruto overcome impossible obstacles, and this was no different. With any luck he could beat the man in a game of wills. But just in case, and I will never let you have the chance. The man chuckled again and closed his eyes. We shall see. It had been a few days since Team 7 had left the land of the waves. The situation in the wave was resolved and its people were prospering, which is more than their mission parameters had asked for, so they returned with pay for an A-ranked mission and a success mark on their records. As for Zabuza and Haku, their employer was dead, so they had no hope of being paid by him directly. Since the quarrel with the Leaf Ninja was over, they packed up and left after raiding a few of Gato's warehouses to get the pay they felt they deserved. However, Haku couldn't carry much with 2 broken arms, courtesy of the pale-skinned spirit of the Masamune. Before the two departed, Kakashi let them know Konoha welcomed Rogue Ninja, within reason, attempting to escape their old nation. At the very least they would be able to safely ask for respite without being harmed or captured, but Konoha might not accept them if they were deemed too dangerous or seemed untrustworthy. While they didn't want to be tied to any nation, they certainly enjoyed the thought of protection against Mist Hunter Ninja that Konoha could provide. They told Kakashi that they would think about it and they parted ways. However, before they left they had a conversation with Naruto. He wanted to at least see if the veteran swordsman would consider teaching him a few sword skills. As it turned out, they were more than willing to cooperate after they spoke. They didn't even realize how long they had been talking until the sun began to set. By the time they walked away, it seemed certain that Zabuza would return to help teach the blonde boy to use his swords. Naruto wasn't sure, but Zabuza must have taken a liking to him or something because they got along fairly well. Maybe demons can communicate subconsciously. Naruto was having more problems than just finding a sensei. The blonde boy didn't understand how or exactly when they happened, but he noticed the changes in himself. His slight increase in height, the deep tone of his voice, the longer and lighter hair. Finally he noticed his body was thinner, but faster. He wasn't physically more powerful, but he could move much more quickly than he remembered. His senses were slightly increased as well, namely in the eyes. Dark rooms seemed to be far more illuminated, and it only took the slightest amount of light passing into his vision for him to clearly see an area. When he looked in the mirror, it almost seemed like his eyes were producing their own shine, which added into his natural blue. Naruto cringed at the thought of his new looks. He may be more outwardly beautiful, but he knew what he was becoming. The smooth features of the pale man's visage ran across his streamlined toned body, and it scared him. Naruto shakily ran a hand across his defined cheekbones down to his lightly pointed chin. He released a deep groan and listened to the new low tone of his voice. To others it may sound silky and seductive, able to lull anyone into a false sense of security or warmth. But to him it only reaffirmed what he already knew. They were more the mark of a demon than the whisker scars created by the Kyuubi. You've noticed the changes. Gilgamesh spoke to Naruto for the first time in a few days. Naruto hadn't been trying to get a hold of him quite yet, so it wasn't like they were avoiding a conversation or anything. Yeah, Gilgamesh? Naruto asked squeamishly. Yes? I wanted to apologize for what I did. I should have known I couldn't beat him, he said sadly. There was a contemplative pause on the behalf of the spirit. There is no need for an apology. At some point the issue of the other spirit needed to be addressed. Gilgamesh was calm. He didn't want Naruto to know he was happy that he came out on top in the end. He couldn't afford to start a friendship with him unless he wanted to risk another incident like what happened with Masamune. Still, I couldn't help myself. I was so angry I felt like I had to call it out. Naruto clutched his chest at his own words. You were far more than angry. If you had not, you would not have been able to summon Masamune, for it is a sword born of hatred. My hate brought out Masamune? Naruto had no idea he could feel that way. It wasn't pleasant for him. In all the years of him being beaten and abused by the townspeople of Konoha, he never hated them. Disliked them of course, but never hated. It was only when his friendship was in jeopardy did he invoke hate. Since he never had any real friends before Team 7, this was the first time he was even able to experience the horrid emotion. Yes, and the spirit followed. If I use the sword again, will he come back? Naruto asked the million-dollar question. The Kyuubi is keeping a watchful eye on him. He should not escape if you use Masamune. Gilgamesh was worried for his host's ability to fight off the spirit without the Kyuubi's help, but he wouldn't voice his concerns aloud. Naruto got lost in thought for a moment before returning to his conversation with Gilgamesh. So why'd I look different? He finally decided to address the reason the conversation began. The reason he was afraid. Not for himself, but for his friends. Your change in appearance, as well as your voice, are due to your merging. Merging? With what? He figured he was joining with the man, but he didn't know to what degree. Gilgamesh may not know it, but if he doesn't tell Naruto what he wants to hear, then there is a chance that the blonde boy will take matters into his own hands. If it comes down to it, he won't think twice about ending the pale man. Even if it means he has to end himself. The spirit has been brought into the seal with the Kyuubi. As such, you are merging with them both. You and the pale man will begin to share a few attributes. This explains the lighter hair, taller build, and shine in your eyes. The increased senses is a mix of the Kyuubi's and the spirit's chakra with yours. What about my voice? Why is it deeper? That is also the man's doing. So he isn't taking over? He asked with a hint of worry. No, he is not. Thanks to the Kyuubi, you are taking him over. At some point you will absorb his entire being. He decided to leave out the fact that without the Kyuubi suppressing the man, he would try to take control again. He didn't need to tell Naruto because Gilgamesh already knew the blonde boy could connect the dots. Naruto mentally sighed in relief. I'm not sure if you are able to worry cause I never know what the hell you're thinking, but if you can worry, know that you don't have to. I will not let him win no matter what happens. I have too much at stake. Too many people to protect. Naruto left no room for question in his voice. The spirit was silent. He believed in his container. He even trusted him. Gilgamesh could feel that this boy of 12 was on par with some of the greatest heroes that have ever wielded one of his 6 swords. If that is your prerogative. He answered emotionlessly. Naruto chuckled. Don't lie. I know you wanted me to win. What I want is irrelevant. You didn't say no. Naruto laughed before he quickly cut the connection with Gilgamesh. The spirit sighed to himself. I really have to learn to keep my mouth shut. Konoha was finally within Team 7's eyesight. At least the large wall and slightly open double doors were. The genin let out a collective sigh as soon as they saw the gate guards waving to them. They were finally home. Okay, you guys go relax. You definitely deserve it. I'm going to report to the Hokage. Kakashi said with a bored voice. Hi Kakashi-sensei. The team spoke in unison. Kakashi shunshined to his destination, leaving the 3 genin alone. Sasuke began to walk away. He was going to go back to his quiet home in the center of the Uchiha compound to take some well-deserved rest after such a long mission, but before he got too far, Sakura caught up with him. Hey Sasuke-kun, want to get something to eat? She asked for what seemed to Sasuke like the 1000th time. He looked at her for a second before continuing his walk. No thanks. Sakura watched his retreating form with a sad face. He never eats with me. She pouted. Sakura felt a small tap on her shoulder. The pinkette turned and locked her green eyes with her blue counterpart. Hey Sakura-chan, wanna grab a bite to eat real quick? Naruto chuckled and scratched the back of his head. Sakura looked him up and down. Since his sudden increase in height, he couldn't wear the same old orange jumpsuit anymore. Instead, he was forced to wear black pants and a close-fitting gray shirt that they found back in Wave. Naruto complained like crazy when the store said they didn't have any orange, but he got over it after Sakura smacked him once or twice. The pink cat definitely thought this look suited him much better than the old one. Sakura wasn't interested in giving Naruto something akin to a date, but she couldn't say no to his strangely glowing puppy dog eyes. Hey, alright, where do you want to go? Where else? Ichiraku's, of course. Even though his voice was deep and very inviting, Sakura still appreciated that his boyish charm didn't diminish with his oddly mature-sounding tone. Sakura agreed and they made the quick journey to Naruto's favorite restaurant. She liked it on occasion too, so it was okay. When they arrived, they took the first two open seats next to each other and struck up a conversation. As Sakura listened to Naruto talk, she noticed something strange. Even though he was still ending every sentence with, "believe it," and being his same old annoying self, she found that he wasn't actually annoying at all. His voice lulled her into his words until she finally found herself thoroughly enjoying her conversation with Naruto. It was then she realized that she never really took the time to talk to her teammate and find out about him. She just fell into the hype of looking down on the outcast and assuming he is the most annoying person ever. Turns out he's actually a great guy with a bad representative. After a few minutes passed, Ayame walked up to take their order. "Hello, how may I?" "Naruto-kun?" she asked with a raised brow. "Ayame-chan, my first A-ranked mission was a success." He blurted out the news because he wanted to impress her and her father since they were two of his precious people. Ayame stared at him. "What happened to you? You look so different. How about hot?" She averted her gaze to Sakura with a blush. Naruto tried to think fast. "Oh, it's a growth spurt. Yeah, I'm getting more mature." He put a hand on his elegant face. "Why? Is it bad?" he asked with apprehensive worry. She waved her hands in defense. "Oh no, it's not bad." Her eyes go half-lidded and her voice lowered slightly. "Not bad at all," the waitress said as she lightly licked her lips. Sakura stared her down. "Ayame, you ignorant slut, stop flirting with him right in front of me." She reeled back her emotions and tried to figure out why she would get mad about this. He was a teammate, not a potential boyfriend. The pink cat wanted to slap herself for thinking about boyfriends and Naruto in the same breath. "Calm down, Sakura. You love Sasuke-kun." "Oh, thanks I guess," Naruto said as he nervously scratched the back of his head. Ayame hadn't realized she said that out loud and blushed furiously. "What would you like me to make you?" It sounded like there was an implication for more than food, but Naruto wasn't sure. The two genin placed their orders and Ayame wrote them down with a smile. Before the waitress walked away to make their food, she let her gaze trail over Naruto for a longer than normal period. "Yeah, that's right, just keep fucking staring, you skank," Sakura said mentally, followed by a deep sigh. "What the hell is wrong with me? I'm swearing like a sailor in my own head about a guy the first don't even want to date." As soon as Ayame walked away, the teammates re-engaged in their stimulating conversation, and it didn't take long for the food to arrive. They had a nice meal together, and before either one of them realized it was already time to part ways. "See you later, Sakura-chan," Naruto said, waving his hand as he looked over his shoulder at the pink cat. "Goodbye, Naruto. See you later," she yelled back in a tone that sounded more excited than she had meant to deliver, and she waved her hand back and forth furiously. She stopped waving abruptly when she noticed how dumb she looked. Her hand had been going side to side so fast it looked like her right arm was having a seizure in the air. "I really should have gotten to know him before this." She shook her head at herself. "Oh well, there's no time like the present, I guess." Sakura went home happy with her blossoming relationship with her teammate, but she would deny any romantic feelings for him vehemently. Naruto felt more alive than ever. He just had a meal with his crush and he really felt they had a connection this time. He wanted to just get lost in his thoughts about Sakura until he reached his shabby apartment, but the whole walk there seemed off. The Jinchuriki was used to the hard glares or purposeful cold shoulders of the civilians as he walked around the village. Honestly, he preferred the glares over feigned indifference because at least if they glared at him they had to acknowledge he was there in the first place. However, this time the walk was different. Sure, many of the older civilians still glared or ignored him, but the younger crowd was acting funny. Especially the girls. They used to ignore him or call him a pest, but now they were definitely looking directly at him, and it wasn't with annoyance. They were making it painfully obvious as they stared at him with their mouths slightly agape. Naruto couldn't understand it. The blonde boy had never seen a look like this coming his way before. And why were they giggling? Was his fly open? He looked down and checked. Nope. Was there something on his face? He wiped his hand across his mouth. Nothing wrong there either. Then why the hell are these girls blushing and giggling at him? They've even started to form small groups where they would stare at him until he looked back and then would promptly blush and chatter amongst themselves. What kind of torture is this? Gilgamesh laughed at the boy's expense. Silently, of course. Even a spirit with no physical body understood what the looks meant. My container is quite dense when it comes to women. He eventually got so frustrated that he took to the rooftops until he made it back home. At least on the rooftops the only people hopping around will be ninja. Naruto didn't notice it, but there was another ninja 3 rooftops to his left who was also trying to avoid the crowds of civilians. Bright pupilless blue eyes watched Naruto jump away. The blonde-haired girl who those eyes belonged to quickly followed after him. Naruto made it home and barely had time to open his door and throw his backpack on the bed before an Anbu with a cat mask showed up. The Hokage requests your audience. Naruto smiled and nodded. He knew the old man would want to see him soon, given the details of his latest operation. The blonde boy was going to go to him later that day anyways. He wanted to tell his grandfather figure about his first successful mission, even if it did go awry. Kakashi just got done explaining the details of Team 7's latest mission. Throughout the Jonin's debriefing the Sandame hadn't said a word, as is customary. He silently took all the information in. The only noise from him was an occasional drag on his pipe. Cat. At the Hokage's call an Anbu phased out of the shadows. Hokage-sama, go tell Naruto to come visit me. The Hokage said gently. Hi. The Anbu phased back into the darkness of the Hokage's office to find Naruto. The old Hokage slowly opened his desk and took out a bag of tobacco. After packing his pipe full of the carcinogenic substance he took a long drag. I must say that this is hard to believe, Kakashi. I know Hokage-sama. I would question it myself if I wasn't there. Kakashi said while leaning lazily up against a wall. And what do you think of this Gilgamesh? I am unsure. The only thing we know concerning his intentions is that he did warn Naruto what would happen if he used his sword. That being our only evidence, it would appear he means no harm. The Hokage tensed. And the Kyuubi? Is what you said true? Yes. I could never forget what the Kyuubi's chakra felt like, and from what I saw it helped Naruto force the spirit back into the sword. The Hokage furrowed his brow. He knew how Kakashi felt. The old ninja could never forget the Kyuubi's chakra either. This is all very odd. The two continued discussing a few other details about the mission until they heard a knock at the door. Come in, Naruto, the Hokage said. Naruto casually walked in with both of his hands linked behind his head. Hey Gigi, heard you wanted to see me. Sarutobi cocked his head at the young genin. Kakashi was right. He does look different. Not so different that I can't tell it's him, but still quite a change. The Hokage gave him a smile. Congratulations on your first successful A-ranked mission. I'm very proud of you. Naruto's face lit up. Thanks, old man. It was real tough, but nothing I couldn't handle. Naruto said enthusiastically. Good, good. I'm glad you're excited. You're becoming a fine ninja. This latest mission proved it. The Hokage said happily. Naruto chuckled nervously. Oh, thanks. He knew what was coming. So, the old man shifted in his chair and set his pipe down. Concerning this last mission of yours. Naruto twiddled his thumbs. I was hoping you could shed some light on a few details for me. The blonde boy dropped his head. Details such as? The Hokage looked at him for a moment. I know you already know what I want to ask you, Naruto. The kind old man got up and put a comforting hand on the genin's shoulder. There's nothing to worry about. It'll be okay. I promise. Naruto lifted his head and saw the truth in his grandfather figure's eyes. Okay. For the next 30 minutes Naruto explained to the Hokage and Kakashi everything. Nothing was left out. Gilgamesh, the Kyuubi, the Pale Man, and even Zabuza was brought up. The two elder ninja rarely interrupted Naruto's report, and by the end they weren't completely at ease with the situation Naruto was in, but they didn't feel like they had too much of a choice except to leave him be, under their watchful eyes of course. The fact is there wasn't much they could do except see how everything is going to unfold. The Hokage was the first to speak when Naruto was finished. Thank you, Naruto. That was interesting. You don't believe me, do you? Naruto deadpanned. The Hokage laughed. I do believe you. Every word. But I have never heard of anyone in this situation. Naruto felt like he knew the next words that were going to come out of the old man's mouth. I'm on lockdown, aren't I? The blonde sighed. No. The Hokage chuckled. I've never heard of anyone in this situation, and that's why I'm going to let this play out. With a little interference by us. Naruto hadn't expected that. Really? He asked cautiously. Yes. Kakashi and I will keep an eye on you, but if you think something is going wrong you have to tell us. Okay? He smiled. Of course, Gigi. He was so happy he didn't have to be confined. Naruto was pretty sure some sort of regulations were going to be put on him to prevent him from possibly losing control. Instead, he is completely free. At least as long as the civilian council doesn't find out too much about the operation. Good. Now go get some rest. You deserve it after doing so well on your mission. Sarutobi smiled. See ya, Gigi. Catch ya later, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said as he bolted out of the room. When the boy was gone, Kakashi turned to the Hokage. We're just going to watch him? He questioned. Sarutobi sat back down into his wooden chair. I trust Naruto. And honestly, I don't know what we can do. I could call Jiraiya to come look at his seal, but you said yourself it was exactly the same as it was before. My Sharingan showed it is the exact same pattern and still has the same amount of the Yondaime's chakra running through it. It is running at 100% capacity. Kakashi stated. Exactly. And as for these new spirits and swords, I don't think there is much we can do, but watch him. If anything seems off about him, report to me immediately and I will confront Naruto about it. Although, the Hokage put a finger to his chin. I feel like I've heard a story about a winged man before. I just can't remember when. He put his hands back on the desk. Oh well, it will be irrelevant before too long. According to Naruto, he is absorbing the man and the Kyuubi now, so once the merging is complete there shouldn't be any problems. Yes, but how long will that take? Kakashi said animatedly as he uncrossed his arms. How long will I have to look at my genin and worry if he's going to suddenly change and kill me? Or the rest of Team 7 for that matter? Kakashi. His voice was soft in an attempt to calm his friend down. The Hokage looked at his subordinate sympathetically. The one-eyed Jonin sighed and rubbed his forehead. He let his emotions get the best of him, which was something he was never known for. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, I overreacted. No, I understand. He looked Kakashi in the eye. But you must realize he has had the Kyuubi no Kitsune inside him for 12 years. If anyone can contain this new being, it's him. The silver-haired ninja moved over to an open chair and sat down. He lazily propped his elbow up on the arm and leaned his head on his hand. Kakashi knew Naruto could handle it, but that didn't change what had already happened. If the Cyclops ninja was anything, he was cautious. And he wanted to make any preparations that were necessary to save Naruto in case there is a problem. I know. He's stronger than I've given him credit for. He said nonchalantly. They all are. Then why bring it up? The older man asked. The Cyclops looked out the large window looming over Konoha as his thoughts ran over the day on the bridge. Just noting concerns, I guess. You know, the Chunin exams are coming up soon. Kakashi continued staring out the window. Yeah, I know. He patted his Jonin vest and the sound of papers crunching filled the room. I'm right here. After Sakura and Naruto parted ways, she basically said hello to her family and went straight to bed. The toll of Team 7's makeshift mission finally began to weigh on her in the form of fatigue and sore muscles. She was so drained she even asked her parents not to wake her in the morning in anticipation of a possible 14-hour rest. Unfortunately for Sakura, other people had plans. Hey forehead. The pinkette could feel a pressure on her chest as a voice broke into some perverted dream she can't remember. Wake up already. This time the voice was accompanied by a small slap to the face. Sakura sputtered at her rude awakening. Even with closed lids she could feel the sun's rays coming through her window. Her emerald eyes opened to see blue ones staring back. Ino, wake up. It's like 9 o'clock already. The blonde said with crossed arms. Sakura looked down in fury. Ino was straddling her. Get the hell off me, pig, she said as she flailed around. Ino just rode her like a bucking bronco. Whoa there, calm down girl, she said as she raised one hand in the air and used the other to hold onto the blankets like reins. Sakura was pissed. She was already tired and now this girl she didn't even like was sitting on top of her playing bullrider. Sakura threw her blankets up over Ino's head and pushed her off the bed with her feet. The blonde hit the floor with a thud. Bitch. The pink-haired girl smirked at her small victory over her rival. What do you want, Ino? She said angrily. The blonde girl pulled the blankets off her and brushed her hair into place with her hands. I come in peace, I swear. She said with her hands defensively in front of her. I don't care, Sakura said as she lifted the sheets off the ground and laid back in bed. I need my beauty sleep for when I see Sasuke-kun. She threw the blankets over her face in a huff, trying to end the conversation. So get out, came the muffled voice from under the blanket. Ino walked to the bed and sat at Sakura's feet. That's just the thing, you can have him, the mind walker said cheerfully. Sakura pulled the sheets out of her face and sat up to glare at Ino. This is a trick, isn't it? I'm not falling for it. Sasuke-kun is mine, she yelled. It's not a trick, stupid. You can have him. The blonde smiled. I like someone else now, she said smugly as she curled her toes at the thought. The pinkette didn't know if she should believe her old best friend. Oh yeah? Then what's this new guy's name? She was too pushy for Ino's liking. I have no idea, the blonde said nonchalantly with shrugged shoulders. Sakura sighed. Then how do you know you like him? Wait, screw that, I don't care. We're not friends anymore, remember? Sakura said. No, that's the beauty of it. We were fighting over Sasuke and now I don't want him. We can be friends again, she said ecstatically. Who said I wanted to be friends with you anymore? Sakura said with malice as she turned her head and pouted. Sakura. The tone in Ino's voice was sad. Don't you remember how we used to be? Just you and me? She moved closer to the pink-haired girl. I want that back. We used to be such good friends. We used to be best friends. The mindwalker put her hand on her shoulder and Sakura turned her head towards her old friend. It had been too long since they did anything but yell at each other. Until Sasuke came along, we were inseparable. I'm telling you now, I won't try to take him from you. I really am trying my hardest to get over Sasuke by finding this other guy, but I need your help. I honestly don't know if I like this other guy yet. I just know he's hot as hell and that's enough for now. She giggled and Sakura inadvertently joined. They had been fighting for what seemed like forever over Sasuke. Becoming friends again wasn't something Sakura ever thought would be possible for them. It seemed unfeasible. Neither one of the girls were willing to give up the black-haired boy, and instead of being friendly about it they took the childish route. They fought and bickered constantly until eventually they were sworn mortal enemies. But the fact is they were just children when they fought. Now they were both genin and officially adults in the eyes of the village, so they should act like it. Why couldn't they give their friendship a second chance? After all, it did hurt to lose her best friend when they broke apart. Ino probably still knew more about her than most people, even though it's been years since they were on civil speaking terms. Sakura groaned. Fine, what does he look like? She said in a bored tone, even though she was smiling on the inside. Ino squealed and clapped her hands together. Thanks, Sakura. She pulled the pink-haired girl into a tight hug. And just as quickly as they had broken up, their friendship had been mended. At least partially. Who would have thought fickleness would actually bring two people back together? Sakura put her arms around Ino's back. Let's just call this strategy. You're one less person trying to get Sasuke-kun and I'm one step closer. Not that you had a chance. She gave her a playful smirk. Ino returned the grin. Keep telling yourself that if it will make you feel better, forehead. You know she said as she put both her arms behind her back and pushed her chest out, actually succeeding in making Sakura jealous. Whatever. So how hot could this guy be that you bail on Sasuke-kun just like that? They both back on the bed and leaned up against the wall. You have no idea. I saw him yesterday on the rooftops while I was running home. I tried to follow him, but he was freaking fast. The pinkette was nearly blinded by the stars in her friend's eyes as she recalled the day before. Come on, Ino, I need details. Sakura said longingly. Okay. He's definitely a ninja because normal people don't go jumping from rooftop to rooftop like that, so we can narrow down the search a lot. He was dressed in black pants and combat boots with a tight gray shirt on. He looked a little skinny, but I bet I could wash my laundry on his abs. She said with a dreamy look. Black pants and a gray shirt. That sounds common, Sakura thought to herself. Plenty of ninja wear that same outfit. Oh, and he has pale blonde hair. That sounds too familiar. And the best part, those eyes, they were so pretty. She couldn't mean, they were all sparkly and blue. Kinda glowy. I just wanted to stare into them forever. Wait, Ino's eyes stopped gleaming and she turned to her friend. Sakura scrunched up her blankets into her fists. I think I know who it is. Ino smiled brightly. Really? Who is it? She said as she moved directly in front of Sakura. She sighed. It's Naruto. Ino blinked a few times and broke out into laughter. That was a dumb joke. I thought you were going to help me. I'm not joking, Ino. How many other blonde shinobi with blue eyes are there besides you or your family? Personally, I don't know of any. Ino stuttered. But he didn't really look like Naruto. He had a… Sakura looked away. Growth spurt recently. Ino sat back stunned. Naruto is. Sakura put a hand on her friend's shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. I know, Ino. I'm sorry if this changes. Dreamy. Ino shouted. What? The pinkette's eyes went wide. I thought you hated him? Ino looked at Sakura like she was stupid. Hate is a really strong word, forehead. She said while wagging her finger. Actually, I thought he was pretty funny. His pranks were awesome. The pink-haired girl was confused and her face showed it. Oh, this makes everything so much easier. He's at Ichiraku's like every day, right? Yeah, Sakura said quietly. I just gotta go to there and then. She began to mumble small plans to herself. She figured it should be really easy to get him to notice her. Just an innuendo here and there should do the trick. Ino broke out of her musings to look over and see Sakura had nearly torn her blankets in two. Forehead? The pinkette looked at her friend with a fake smile. Yeah, pig? What's wrong? It looks like you're going to need a new down comforter if you keep that up. She said as she motioned to Sakura's tightly gripped hands. Nothing's wrong. I'm fine, she said under her breath. Ino dipped in front of Sakura to try to lock eyes, but Sakura's head was lowered too far for her to see. The blonde waited a few moments before dropping her head along with her friend. Oh crap, she said in a huff. What? Sakura shot back. You like him too, don't you? The blonde said it more like a fact than a question. Sakura scoffed. No way. The mind walker smiled. Good, because I'm going to put the moves on him. Grr. Ino dramatically pointed a finger at Sakura. If you don't like him, then what was that growl I just heard from you? She said with a smirk. What growl? I didn't make any noise at all. Sakura defended. The blonde mind walker knew how to manipulate people into telling her what she wanted to know. Not that Sakura would be much of a challenge. She could sap information from her own father's brain if she wanted to, and he's a pro. She would never force her way into her father's mind with the family jutsu or anything, but she had other ways of getting information when she wanted it. She was his princess after all. A girl in Sakura's state of mind is easy for any mindwalker to handle. She just needs a little provocation. Fine, I'm going to run an experiment then. Ino stood in front of her friend and cleared her throat. Naruto and Sakura went to the beach. Ino left it hang as if she were about to start a story about them. The pinkette just quirked her eyebrow. Ino cleared her throat again. Okay, next scene. Naruto and another girl. Grr. The pinkette slapped a hand over her mouth and her eyes went wide. Oh shit, came her mumbled response from under her hand. Was it really just that easy? Ino gave her an all-knowing smirk. Told ya. Sakura was in a panic. Ino, no, she said as if she was scolding a small child, but really she just didn't want Ino to jump to conclusions. Sakura didn't need Sasuke to hear rumors about her liking another guy. I don't have feelings for him, I swear. He's on my team and I worry about him. That's all. The blonde didn't look convinced. If you say so. Ino walked over to the open window she used to get in the room. If that's the case, then I'm going to go find Naruto and see what he's up to. Ya nay, she said before quickly jumping out. Grr. That growling was beginning to make Sakura upset. It was irrational. Why does the thought of Naruto with another girl upset me so much? Ino's head popped back into the window. Her blonde ponytail swayed back and forth as she held herself upside down using chakra to attach to the overhang. Oh, and Sakura? I'm so glad we resolved our differences. The inverted blonde added before leaving once again. Creep. Sakura looked down at the comforter she just ripped in half. Damn. Sakura had gone back to sleep, but a few hours later the pinkette was woken up again by light taps on her window. She curled over on her twin-sized mattress and looked at her alarm clock with tired eyes. Noon. It's time to get up anyway. She stood up and stretched before walking to the window. She pulled the drapes open expecting Ino to have come back with news on Naruto or something. Not that she cared. Ino can go ahead and try all she wants. Instead of seeing the pupilless eyes of her recently reacquired friend, she gazed upon the fluorescent blue hues of her teammate. "Yo, Sakura-chan, can I come in? I've got food." He wiggled his eyebrows as he waved 2 bags full of provisions back and forth. She sighed at his stupid display. Why does he have to wiggle his eyebrows all weird like that? Sakura didn't really want him in her room, but she was starving, so she made an exception. "Yeah, come on in, but don't touch anything," she said as she opened the window for him. Naruto ducked under the sill and peered around the room. Instantly his mind went into pink overload. Everything was covered in the same color. Pink sheets, pink drapes, pink walls. It looked like a 3-year-old was living there. "Try some diversity," he said as he turned to look at her. "You know there's more than one color in the spectrum, right?" Naruto laughed at his joke, but was cut off when Sakura smacked him in the head. "I like the color, so shut up." The fuming girl held her fist up to his face. "Or do you want some more?" The frightened blonde held the bag of food in front of his own face, hoping she wouldn't punch through it. "Aw, I'm sorry. Here, I got it from your favorite restaurant." He shoved the food in her hands and jumped back. Sakura opened the bag and looked inside. Not only was it from her favorite place, but was also her favorite dish. Syrup-coated anko dumplings and umeboshi. How did he know that? Her parents barely even knew she liked that stuff. She looked over at Naruto to see him pull the top off of some ramen, and it seemed like his shining blue eyes glowed even brighter as he held the steaming bowl of noodles in his hand. Sakura took her food and sat directly in front of him on her floor. "How did he know what I like? Naruto? HRRRMMFF?" he said with noodles hanging out of his mouth and his cheeks covered in broth. It was disgusting. There was no way she was going to let him sit there and slurp his food all over her carpet, so she simply sighed and took a napkin out of her bag. They both thought she was just going to hand him the small piece of cloth so he could clean himself, but instead she reached over herself and wiped the excess liquid off his cheeks. When her hand accidentally rubbed up against his whisker marks, Naruto felt a powerful jolt, which caused him to shudder. She hadn't realized what she was doing until her hand was gently lying against his bare cheek. The napkin lay on the floor, discarded and forgotten, as she slowly rubbed her thumb back and forth across his wild whisker scars. His skin was so smooth. Naruto shut his eyes and leaned into her hand like a kitten wanting to be petted. He honestly didn't know he was doing it. It just felt so good to have her touch him like this. Her hands were extremely soft for a ninja, and they had the distinct smell of Sakura's light strawberry-scented hand soap she always carried with her on their missions. Naruto had grown accustomed to it very quickly, and now if he ever ate a strawberry he could only think of her. He wondered if she tasted the same. Sakura quickly pulled her hand back and covered her blushing face. "Oh my god, what was I doing?" The flustered preteen tried to stand up so she could run out of the room in embarrassment, but before she could even move, Naruto's face appeared directly in front of hers. "Oh no, do you have the flu too?" He placed the back of his hand across her forehead. Her previous embarrassment left her and was replaced with anger as she smacked his hand away. "No, I don't have the flu. Why would you even think that?" Naruto leaned back on his legs. "Pretty much every girl I saw today had really red faces just like yours." This made her blush return. Even Ayame-chan and Ino-chan got it. Those names made Sakura cringe. "You saw Ino today?" she said, trying to contain the anger she wished she didn't have. Naruto rubbed his chin in thought. "Yeah, when I was at Ichiraku's she showed up. She must have been really sick because she was barely even able to talk to me without stuttering. I think she was trying to get me sick or something though." Sakura hid her frustration with her friend with a raised eyebrow. "Why do you say that?" She seethed. "She kept getting all close to me and stuff. I backed away, but every time I moved she sat closer to me." He huffed. "I know she doesn't like me, but trying to get me sick is just mean." She considered the pout on his face cute. "And I don't think Ayame-chan should be making people's food if she didn't feel well, but she said she was fine and I really wanted ramen, so I didn't argue." Sakura didn't know if she should laugh at Naruto's stupidity or feel bad for him for not understanding. How does he not have a clue? At least she knew Ino didn't get anywhere with him. Naruto was apparently too dim to realize what a blush could mean. She supposed she was lucky for that as well because the red on her face still hadn't completely left. "Don't worry about Ino. I'll take care of her," she said evilly. Naruto scratched the back of his head nervously. Thanks, but I don't think you need to do anything." I've never gotten sick before, so she couldn't give me the flu even if she wanted," he said cheerfully. She was still going to have a talk with Ino about this, but for now she will concede to make Naruto happy. Fine. Since when did she care about making him happy? Thanks Sakura-chan, you're the best, he said as he went back to digging into his ramen. Sakura looked down at her own dish and returned to her previous thoughts. Hey Naruto? Yeah? He said, making sure to have no broth on his face or noodles hanging out of his mouth this time. How did you know my favorite place to eat? She asked him while taking a bite out of her dumpling. It was delicious as ever. He put down his bowl so he didn't over-tempt himself to eat while he was talking. A few years back we were sitting in Iruka-sensei's class and you told the Teme where you wanted him to bring you for a date. I just happened to be next to you when you said it. Oh, suddenly the dumplings didn't taste so good. Not that there was anything wrong with them. She just wished she didn't ignore him so heavily when they were younger that she couldn't even tell when he was around. It left a bad taste in her mouth that no amount of umeboshi could wash out. You also listed off your favorite foods for him, so I knew what to get you when I went there, Naruto said with a small grin. So you're telling me I mentioned the food I liked one time a few years ago and you still remember what I wanted? It would have been more charming if it wasn't kind of creepy. Still, Sakura found it very odd his memory was so keen. It seemed like he knew a little too much detail about a random day from a few years ago, but she shrugged it off for now. He smiled brightly and she really wished he wasn't so cute. Of course Sakura-chan, I had to know where to take you when you finally accept one of my dates. She smacked him over the head again. Keep dreaming Naruto. The blonde boy stared into her eyes and they both became transfixed on one another. I will, for now. The way he said it made Sakura blush. His husky voice rang in her ears and made her body shiver with pleasure, and it was so seductive she wondered if he was even trying to do it. Mostly, she wanted to know what it was he did to her in his dreams. Again, she cursed herself for having such weird thoughts. He was supposed to be a friend and nothing more. She turned her head away to stop her heart from beating so hard. Perv, the pinkette said, even though her mind was the one that was in the gutter. Naruto cut the tense moment with a smile and stood up. Oh well, I'll get out of your hair I guess. She whimpered lightly as he stood up and collected his dish. The young woman found herself not wanting him to go. He could stay if he wanted. I just wanted to drop by and see how you were. You looked pretty exhausted yesterday. He was always too concerned for others. She was too flustered to say much else, so she decided to stay quiet. Before long he already had one foot on the frame of her window ready to jump. See ya later Sakura-chan. With one final smile he leapt out to do who knows what. Sakura was beginning to realize why she would growl when she thought about him with anyone else. Damn again. Without warning or sound, a figure faded in the room from the shadows on her wall. Pardon the interruption. Sakura turned quickly to see an Anbu member with a cat mask standing in her room. But the Hokage would like to see you. As soon as Sakura nodded her head, the Anbu vanished just as quickly as she came, and Sakura got ready to go see the village's leader as quickly as she could. She had no idea of the surprise that awaited her when she would arrive in his office. Ino was angrily pacing back and forth in her room. Why? Because she fucked up. After leaving Sakura's house she went searching for Naruto. It only took minutes before she found him at Ichiraku's talking to the waitress that worked there. It was the perfect chance to talk to Naruto and try to make him like her, but no. Instead she stuttered worse than Hinata during the spelling bee and made herself look like a fool in front of her new crush. What was worse was he kept moving away from her. Ino smacked her hand on a nightstand. I can't believe he thought I had the flu. After walking to her bed and venting her anger on a poor defenseless pillow, she calmed down. The pillow was torn to bits, but at least she was finally able to think with a level head. Okay, plan A didn't work. It's time for plan B, she said with a grin as she walked to the door to leave. Ino gasped as she opened the door to her hallway and an Anbu member was standing there. Damn, looks like plan B will have to wait. Sakura politely knocked on the double doors to the Hokage's office and patiently awaited a response from the other side before walking in. As she walked in the office she noticed the two giant stacks of paperwork he was neglecting. Apparently he thought staring blankly out of his window and smoking his pipe was far more pressing than village affairs. If it wasn't the Hokage she would have smacked this procrastinator. Hokage-sama, you wished to see me? She said with a polite bow. He turned his head away from the window and smiled. Ah Sakura, Thank you for coming on such short notice. He could see she must have rushed herself over to his office because her clothes and hair were slightly disheveled. We should wait for your teammates to arrive before I tell you why I have called you here, he said as he turned to look back out of his window. I guess Team 7 has a mission already. Almost immediately after the Hokage stopped speaking, another knock was heard on the door. Enter. Sakura turned her head expecting to see Naruto, Sasuke, or Kakashi. When she saw the blonde head of hair make its way through first, she had to admit to herself she was a little excited. She hadn't expected to see Naruto so soon after the encounter. That seemed awkward for her, but surprisingly normal for Naruto. But wait a minute, Naruto's hair isn't that long, is it? Hey forehead, what are you doing here? Ino asked as she quirked an eyebrow. I could ask you the same thing, pig. Sakura glared back at her friend in jest. Calm down, girls. Partners shouldn't argue like this. The old ninja chuckled. Partners? Sakura asked. Yes, you two and another will be partners for this next mission. The Hokage took a long drag from his pipe. But what about our original teams? Ino felt it was odd to break up the Ino-Shikacho combo for any mission. They always worked well together. The Akamichi and Nara clans have special family inductions they need to take care of, in which the boys must be present. Do not worry, you will not need them for this mission anyways. You two are just the backup for the third member. The old man smiled like he just told them a joke. Who's the third member? Sakura asked. This mission is tailored to a special ability only your third member possesses. And I think you both know who he is. The Hokage laughed when he felt the familiar chakra of the final member approach the door. So who is it then? Sakura asked, trying not to get aggravated with the man who could probably kill her with a stare. The doors crash open without even a courteous knock to alert them of the newcomer's presence. Hey Gigi, what do you want? I'm busy. Oh hey Sakura-chan. Hey Ino-chan, what are you guys doing here? He gave them a smile and they both blushed immediately. Hey Naruto. Ino ran over and clamped onto his arm. We have a mission together. Isn't that great? Naruto had an uneasy look on his face as the girl clung mercilessly to his arm. Yeah, it's really great. He was actually happy for a mission. Just another chance to prove himself. However, the blonde on his arm was another story. In the past she treated him more as a pest, but now she seemed to not want to leave him alone. Naruto's ear twitched as he picked up an odd noise. Hey, do you guys hear that? Hear what? Ino asked. He took a thinking pose. It kind of sounds like a growl. Grr, pig, let go of my teammate. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.